I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to go around and do some introductions first. So I'm Heather Mann. I'm the chair of the committee, and I am here representing the Midwater Trawlers Cooperative.
Bob Eder, vice chair, representing longliners, fishing vessel team.
Karen Hewitt, Port Administrative Supervisor.
John Mann, NIT Supervisor.
Ken Gibson, North Commercial Harbor Master.
Luke Parsons, Jim, Brittany.
Aaron Brez, Director of Operations for Report.
Ted Gibson, Crabber, Shrimper. Gary Ripka, Port Dock 5 representative.
Mark Newell, fisherman and fish buyer.
Sarah Scams, report liaison.
Gene Law, Shrimper, Crabber.
David Jenks, Distant Water Fleet.
Jennifer Stevenson, Newport Fisherman's Wives.
Pete Gettner, Port Newport's lawyer.
Mike Story, Whiting Trawler.
And I'm Lance, Pete Markle, City Council.
Okay. Before we jump into changes to the agenda, I'll just do what I generally do at these meetings. I like to allow public comment. There's not a whole bunch of people in the audience, but on each item as we go versus at the beginning and the end. And I'm going to do that today as well, unless it gets out of hand, which I don't look like it, doesn't look like it will. Pete. And are there any changes to the agenda? Bob, thank you for working together with Doug and Aaron to put this agenda together while I was gone. So does anybody have any suggested changes?
I don't have really a change, but I'd like to see an addition for discussion, and that's on the remaining capital improvements projects, and it's a west entrance to the terminal. I have past information on tsunami routes and evacuation routes that I think the port really needs to pick up on. So I'd like to see that added.
And would that come under the infrastructure update, or?
You can put it wherever you want. It's up to you.
Is that where?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. Okay. Any other?
I'm going to go hook up with Ken. I'll be back in a second.
I got one for you. You got a whole one. Yeah.
Any other committee members have changes or additions?
Heather, it may fit under one of the existing items, but on the hoist dock, the proposed hoist dock out of the terminal, I'd like to see if you guys can help us a little bit on that. So I've got some specific inquiries there when the time comes.
So, on the product handling?
On the proposed one, yeah, for it's about $130,000 proposed project out of the terminal.
Okay, so I guess that would come under where you have hoist dock and NIT on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's jump in then. We'll start off with the port infrastructure update. Aaron, are you leading that, or Doug?
Yeah. Did you want me to cover that?
I'll put you.
Okay, so we're at the end of last year's contract for OVEX engineering design of the Port Dock 5 project. And then we'll be starting up after the 1st of July, presumably with the next phase of that, which is the final engineering for that project. There's still no work planned on replacement of the pier this year. We've got a load of dock rods coming in from Salem. That would be for 5X and 5B. No, 5X
and
Dock 3, sorry. So we have to figure out personnel-wise, cut people over to be able to perform that maintenance this summer. That's the biggest project we probably have coming in the commercial marina over the summertime. The capital improvements, proposed capital improvements for the following year. We also got some new floats for Port Dock 7, and that's 7E and F, which, as you guys know, are some of the worst docks that we have in the commercial marina right now. So, of course, the budget still has yet to be approved, so we'll see where that comes out. That for now is that's the nuts and bolts of it right there.
You got new floats. Did you going to put new pilings in that E&F also?
We got a handful of pilings in order to hold it together that I've started the permitting process on. 6 pilings. We're also replacing 2 those slips out at the end of 5 that have the pilings at the end of them. There's a finger and then a piling stuck at the end of it. A couple of those are broken off and missing, so those are also on that same piling project to be replaced. As far as the floats go, I've done a bunch of calling around to try and figure out what the best floats are and the cheapest floats. The obviously concrete ones are really expensive. I still haven't figured out yet how it is people are installing concrete pilings with the new requirements to let, I think it's 60% of the light come through across 50% of the float. I still don't know how it is floats like. I know that I think they just got some done down at Port of Umpqua here recently. I even asked the question about, is it a matter of replacing in kind or what is it? And I haven't been able to get an answer. I've been talking to John Van Stavern up at Pacific Habitat Services. But I came into another company that makes floats that are not UHMW, but there's a company that makes LDPE floats, and then there's a company that makes HDPE floats. And I got referred to a contractor who's done a bunch of work up in Dutch Harbor and a few other places around that. So they worked on the transient dock in Kodiak, as I understand, and they gave us some suggestions that we might be able to find floats a little bit cheaper than the concrete ones from was Bellingham Marine, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's that.
What about the steel rods on 5? When do you plan on doing that? And what's your time frame on that? How long it's going to take?
Well, the length of time it'll take. It depends on how. So as you know, it depends on how busy the hoist dock is right now. We got enough people to run the hoist dock, and then cut people over as we can possibly get them. We've carved out a spot for a maintenance supervisor, but don't really have the people to be able to run those projects with them, other than the folks that we got in the regular staff. So it'll be dependent on staffing, but I'd like to see them done by the end of by mid-September. So that'd be the goal.
So when would you start?
As soon as we get them and can get started. We don't have them yet, so.
How much dock space is going to be shut down during that time?
What do you think?
It won't be, just on the X dock will be maybe 100 feet on each side while the project's going on soon, somewhere there.
I just worry about the
Yeah. Especially on 3 as well. 3 will be, I think, probably the harder one to juggle, I would imagine, because those boats are going to need to go someplace else too. That'll certainly be an impact to Chelsea Rose as well.
What was the timing on that, Aaron?
Well, we don't have the rods yet. As soon as we get them, we'd like to start the project. And I would expect sometime in the next week we'll get the rods. But then, of course, if we get really busy at the hoist dock, we're not going to be able to cut the people over there to go do it because we'll be running the hoist dock. So it'll be very much flexible. Depends on how busy we are at the hoist.
So having this update coming to us, is it just informational, or are you looking for some feedback? Or
I'll always take feedback on anything. You guys, if I say
is there something specific you wanted feedback on? Or
the floats question, I suppose, would be, what kind of floats have you seen elsewhere that worked well? Anacord, what's the name of that? This contractor that I got in touch with that does work around Alaska, Anacortez. Cannot remember the rest.
Transpac, I think.
Yeah,
that one.
Anacortez Transpac. They do a bunch of float work, and they had suggested that these LDPE floats that I'm looking at, they said as long as you get the ones that are framed with tubular steel or galvanized on the outside, they said they hold up pretty well to large boats in nasty weather. I asked them about the corrosion factor on the tube on the steel. They said, the best I can tell you is they said they hold up pretty well. Of course, anything we put in there is going to corrode, but it's just a matter of how fast it corrodes. So if, like I said, if you hear me say something about some floats and you're thinking, well, that ain't going to work, let me know and I'll do some more digging and find something else. But these things are about half as expensive as concrete floats, so which always makes me a little bit leery.
Did you get grant money for those? I remember we talked about it before.
Can you get grant money to buy the docks or the pilings
If we, so,
uninstalled?
yeah, as far as I can tell right now, to get them quickly, we may not be able to get grant money. It may delay it if I try, seek some grant money. I've been looking all summer, or all winter for the summer, trying to find some opportunities out. There's no Connect Oregon money available right now. We're in a bit of a difficult position with Business Oregon because we don't have our strategic business plan up to date yet. So we need to get that done so that we'll actually compete well for grants. It's kind of the, I guess the analogy would be that plan and how well we put together where we're going strategically really is a big factor in how well we compete with grants, because otherwise we'd be kind of like going to the bank and saying, I wanted to get into business and I need a loan, and they say, well, what business? And I say, I don't know yet. So
It's a replacement concept.
right.
The Port of Newport, or the Port of Toledo contacted me recently about a support letter for a grant that they were writing for a grant program that's for small ports that offers a bunch of different infrastructure
Okay.
type. And we wrote the letter. A small port is considered one with less than 500 employees, or the project I'm talking about?
I do, but I don't know what the
I
stipulations.
don't have it off the top of my head, but I can get it to you.
That'd be great.
I also spoke to Bud a while back about possible teaming operations between his port and ours on any larger grants where we might be able to go into one together, and he's going to keep an eye out for something like that. He felt that might be a good approach.
Sarah?
I read in an SDAO newsletter something about opportunity zones. Did the port ever look into that? I know Port of Astoria did, and it was like an economic zone on the new name, and it was for rural ports.
Give me a second. So you said opportunity zones.
Right.
First, I heard I did look around with SDAO to find.
I think that to sign up for that ended about a month ago.
Okay, and I looked at SDAO to see what they had available, and
I remember it was opportunity zones, so
Okay.
I want to check on that.
and I'd have to look into it more because I haven't heard that term before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
And I believe, Sarah, doesn't the port already have an arrangement for some economic development type zones that have been
Yeah,
set
this
up?
was a new administration, new terminology, kind of like all the other stuff that's just being renamed. But I did see the Port of Astoria signed up for that. So they might know.
okay.
Gary, did you have a question?
That's what they had to do with the old docks.
It's 7.
Hopefully give them Thompson's.
Yeah, we had.
They're that bad.
Yeah, they're pretty. I mean, they're 6 foot. Some of them are 6 foot. Some of them are 8 foot wide. Most of them are 6 foot, and they're in really bad shape.
So I think we're only talking about 150 or 160 feet of dock to replace it.
I know one of the charter officers is looking for dockage.
They don't want those.
Now, on those docks, you were talking about circular deal for the pilings. Is that going to be on the outside of the dock, or are they going to be inside the dock?
Well,
Because that's a huge difference for tying up.
yeah, because you lose the moorage on the side that has dock rings. I prefer to get them inside. That way you don't have that problem. I think they're a little bit better. They're more structurally sound too, because then you don't have to worry about replacing the bag of dock rings when they rust out and everything else. So I would prefer to get them inside.
Because you lose tie-up spot. You get a bigger boat, and then there's a 30-foot gap that you can't quite fit a boat because of the pilings stuck off the inside.
Yeah, that'd be the way I prefer it. And when I talked to those Anacortes Transpac folks, that's what same thing they said. Obviously, so not doing the entire dock at once. That's kind of one of the challenges we have with pilings, because usually he said they would drive the they would set the dock in place, survey it, get it located right, and then use it as a template to stick the pilings in. But if we're not going to be able to do the entire dock at once, so we're going to have to get it, and put the pilings inside of there, which isn't a huge deal, but it's going to be it's probably going to be per piling a little bit more expensive as a result.
Any feedback you can provide Aaron or I or Kent on that as well, because since we don't have adequate money to just do it properly all at once.
That's kind of why I was getting back to grants. What kind of money do you guys have to do this?
Well, we don't want to work backwards either. We don't want to fix out stuff at the very end of 7, and then when we do get some grant money to fix 7 properly, to have to take it out.
Right,
So we want to work what we do now, where we put the pilings may look a little funny, but it'll be with the idea that they're going to stay there when we do the next piece. Right? It's not going to go backwards. So if you've got some helpful feedback there, that'd be great.
I think
David?
you're looking at the configuration as it is now, rebuilding it as it is for now.
With the pilings on the inside.
Well, anything new, you probably want to put pilings on the inside.
David?
And that's a good point, sticking to the configuration and just rebuilding the dock as you go in sections. I mean, that's your best bet. But I have two comments, and one's on the engineering on Port Dock 5 Pier, and I've seen some assumptions in there, but I haven't seen anything in the commission packets or public information on ODF and W's position on that pier yet. We're already going into stage 3 of engineering.
Okay.
We really should have something from ODF and W. They aren't a signer on permits, but they're the ones that COE and DSL and NIMS will go to before they sign the permit. They will be the one that you're going to have to answer to. So if you're going into stage 3, you really need to have something from ODF and W already.
I'll say,
And that's going to be the same with your Port Dock 7 floats. I mean, we can sit here and engineer floats all day long, but it's going to be ODF and W that tells you what type of float you're going to put in there. And so they're the ones that should be commenting right now on that.
Okay.
That's very important.
You brought that up like months back.
I did.
So as soon as I contacted them and asked them to weigh in with Oak. So they have been working. What I'll do is I'll get them to document some of that stuff.
Absolutely. It needs to be written down because we went through this with the terminal renovation and we fought through so many issues because we weren't getting anything in writing. It was just, oh yeah, well, that's looking good.
Right.
And later on, it wasn't good.
It wasn't, yeah.
No. And so we need something to hold people's feet to the fire in this situation.
Because that's the way it's been so far. They said, oh yeah, it's fine. So we'll get something in writing from them that'll document that.
Yeah, it cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars in engineering at the terminal renovation because we didn't follow up on some of that. So, and then I know, and Dietmar, you might come in on this, I'm not sure. I believe that the city is working with Pacific Seafoods on a grant, an economic infrastructure grant for the old cow shell property in the waterfront.
Yeah, that I'm not up on that.
Yeah, well, there are these grants that are available through economic infrastructure, and I do believe that the city has one that they're working with in conjunction with Pacific right now. So that's another.
Yeah, Derek could be working on it, but he hasn't shared it with council.
Okay.
Do you know who the granting authority is? Is it?
I don't know. I mean, it should be public information. It's, but that's that's an in-water job. What they're planning on doing there.
And what funding was that?
Well, I think it's what I thought it was an economic infrastructure grant. Now I could be wrong on that because it's been several months since I saw that come across, but it should be easy to find out what it is. But it's a dock that they're going to rebuild and turn it into I don't know why.
Oh, because on
You're familiar with that,
well,
right?
yeah, I don't know what the granting authority is, but their Pacific is working to develop like an incubator,
Right.
partnering with the city where they're going to have, I think, 6 or 8 small little businesses in there to help get them started, and I think that's how they're going after
Karen,
money.
I can give you one over on that if you want
Okay.
to.
I'm curious.
I can get
with
back
the
to you on that.
incubator?
Okay.
Not the meeting with the incubator that came here. They came here to talk about them.
I think they came here into the port, regular port meeting.
Right.
So I can go to the city, and then I'll also get a hold of Tony Del Ponte from Pacific and ask him if they can tell me where the grants come. Then we can get an idea and see if we might be eligible for something like that.
It might actually be economic EDA money or something.
It could be. I don't know. It was a grant. I know that.
So, David, you had some other stuff under this agenda item that you wanted to share?
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is the and I'm probably at fault here because I never saw any of this information come up in any of the public documents to the commission or anybody. So maybe I missed the meeting or something that has to do with the west entrance at the terminal. It's now been turned into a one-way, and now I see where there's a photo cell gate that's supposed to go up, a one-way gate.
It's a waste of money.
Well, it's. automatic gate arm with photo cell, one-way west entrance. Anyway, that's a tsunami exit route, and it always has been. I mean, when we did the tsunami plan in 2010, I think I was the last one from the port on that. Spent a couple of weeks working on it. Anyway, what was supposed to happen with that is a typical port failure, fault, you know, it just wasn't followed up on, but it was supposed to be a signage issue, narrow 2-lane road, drive with caution at your own risk or whatever. The signage was already developed and it was supposed to go up, but, and I don't know what the distance is, but I believe it adds almost 2/3 of a mile, half a mile or 2/3 of a mile onto an evacuation route out of the terminals. And that's why it was always a 2-lane road. And then during the shipping issue, when we did meet a couple times during that, that was determined that that was the access road that was going to be for leasees in that area, and also an extra route coming into the terminals, because what was determined is a queuing of log trucks or shipments coming into the terminal was going to block up the haul road coming in. So, so it's kind of, and I don't know with the new commission, Sarah, you guys have worked on this?
Yeah,
or?
we've had it across our desk and stuff. We haven't weighed in on it yet.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's already one-way road, so
Yeah.
something's happened here that,
Maybe Dietmar would know.
you know, I don't want,
Tsunami.
I think it's not a good thing to get people used to a one-way road and then go, oh, we made a mistake. This is a tsunami evacuation route. And then you got people coming and going. So
I'll publicly take the blame for that.
yeah, because this is I mean, it's also an emergency route too, you know.
Okay, I didn't realize that, so
Yeah.
I'll take that into account.
Yeah.
The intention was, when I first saw that, it was all overgrown with
Yeah.
trees. We had some of the trees trimmed, we had some of them removed along there so that trucks could get in and out more easily.
Excellent.
I saw people coming out there almost getting into accidents and breaking their neck trying to get onto that road because people come around that corner so darn quick.
Right.
So I said, well, simple solution is make the thing one way, and we got this great entrance at the other side, and we can just route people that direction. And so we did that, and then the next thing was the fishermen made a point, I think, that from what I understood, of stopping there and flipping people off and say, here's to your one-way road, and going on up the road.
Well, it used to, at one time there was a fork in the road there. In the 70s, there was actually two roads that came in together. One came in from the east and one came in from the west, and they met at the bottom. Well, the east road was removed, the west road was widened out, so they took out that east road access there and widened out the west entrance, and that's what was used as the entrance then, besides the other road. But
the intent was to make a visual statement for people for shipping out of there, to make it look like, hey, something's going on here, and these guys are open to shipping here. So I wanted to open it up a little bit, and that was the initial intent. The same thing with some of the parking you're starting to see out there. We've moved, asked the guys to park back away from the ships. They can go up there with their trucks and unload and what have you, but instead of leaving them sit there for hours on end, move them back a little ways where we got some marked parking now. That way the cranes and the forklifts can get through more readily and a little safer for.
I personally like it one way going in there.
well, that's good. But you know, when you got a tsunami evacuation route, and also you have an emergency route, you know, a half a mile or 2/3 of a mile, Gary, makes a big difference. When you have an emergency vehicle.
coming, you're gonna go up.
I agree with that. I'm just saying, when you're coming in there with a gear trailer loaded down, and you drive in there and you meet somebody coming up the other way that's not doing the one-way thing, it's super tight.
Yeah, but we've never had an accident there.
Push the edge, you know.
Never had an issue.
I'm just kind of like the one-way.
Have you been down since they cleared it?
The clear where? I'm there.
Everyone's dropping in there.
Oh, yeah, I've been in there. It's still tight.
It's unbelievable. It's excellent. I mean, you got such visibility now. When you pull in, you can see all the way to the bottom.
Well, I'm just saying that the tightness driving in there with a gear trailer, loaded with a bunch of crab pots, it's tight.
That's what the east entrance is for.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier coming in there with a gear trailer.
I've seen
Coming in, I'm just saying going out.
It's a signage issue, and that's what it was in the past. It was supposed to be signed and documented, and it never happened.
You say the signs were made, actually?
I have no idea. It's one of those, you know, the port operated like the Flintstones for years there, you know, so it's one of those deals where they're probably still hammering on it with a chisel and a rock, you know, it's one of those deals.
Would folks be comfortable with the arm?
No, there's no.
If it could also be an emergency, there was something somebody could hit, a button or something that.
That's an evacuation route. I don't see why it's not 2 lanes. I mean, this is ridiculous. Dave makes deliveries down there with a forklift. You know, we're going to have this guy. But you know, the emergency part of it is the part that's critical to me.
Right.
If we have an emergency on the dock, I don't want that ambulance driving another 2/3 of a mile to get to the dock. And I want them to, you know, and tsunami ingress, egress, you know, this is a safety issue.
And probably the emergency is more likely to happen than the tsunami, and we're going to see more emergencies than we are tsunamis.
That probably is. And you know, we haven't seen any incidences on that road.
I've never seen a wreck there.
No.
Never.
Everybody comes close,
So-
but nobody wrecks.
Hey, I come close just going to town every day.
The only thing I think I've ever seen there is loaded
trucks,
laying over
high
in the
side,
ditch.
high sided, centered off the wheels once in 30 years.
Yeah. So put a sign up, signage, no truck and trailer traffic, Gary. There you go.
Yeah.
East Vincent, buddy.
Well, I don't see any reason for a gate.
No.
No, that I don't.
That I see no reason for a gate.
What about a nice little polite sign? Would you please consider this one way when going up?
Anyway,
Thank you.
So I brought this up, Sarah, so you can bring it to the commission. I mean,
I will.
I think this is highly important for the tenants down there at the terminal.
The only time a gate would be necessary is if the MARSEC level ever went up, which it hasn't, but if it did, then it's supposed to be a secure facility.
Yeah, but when they're talking security, Don, they aren't talking about road access or ingress or egress. They're talking about
Depending on the level of MARSEC, they absolutely are.
We went through them already, so but we can debate that at another time.
Sure.
We'd already looked at that.
That's really helpful feedback. I appreciate that.
Okay.
I assumed when I did that and had that area cleared, I was going to catch a lot of crap from people for cutting trees and things of that nature.
Well, it's city property. You did a good job. You cleared city property. That's just fine.
Did you get a city permit?
Okay, anything else on this agenda item? Let's keep moving. Is that all you had, David?
Good.
Okay. Next is the update on the proposed fee schedule.
So I can address that, Heather. Can I, would it be possible I can address a different issue that I forgot about earlier that put in here shortly?
Sure.
Okay. The tall ships issue. The port released the press release this morning, early this morning, and so we have copies of it here for anybody that didn't get a chance to look at it online. Karen has copies. Back here, I guess. So we wanted to address the fact that set the record straight on what really happened there. There was a huge amount of misinformation in the papers all the way through the whole process. And so normally you do a press release, you try to make it short and to the point. And our goal, as we worked on it, Stuart and I, was to have a 2-paragraph press release. It ended up, all the feedback everybody wanted to have, it ended up at 3 pages. I apologize for that. But it's all there, and people can look and see what really happened on that story. And I just want to throw it out there.
Yeah, so I would say that I appreciate that being out there. It would have been nice to have a press release about what happened with the shipping deal. It would have been nice to have a press release on a lot of stuff because there's a lot of misinformation out there in the public. So that's just a comment more than anything else. But if you're going to take the time to write a press release on that regarding 2 tall ships, it seems like we could have done a better job of putting some public information out there for why the commission rejected the shipping deal.
Yeah, I just have to say that being a commissioner, it's we're pretty transparent because we have to be. Public meetings, and anytime the commission talks about things, it's public meeting and public minutes, and the website is always updated. Now we have, so I was disappointed that we were being attacked for being non-transparent when we always are, but a press release proves that much better.
Any questions on the tall ship issue?
Just going to resolve the lawsuit?
Pretty aggressive bunch up there, if I doubt it.
what
I mean, the contract.
They can sue us, they're not going to win.
Yeah.
They can sue us. Anybody can sue us.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about the fees.
Okay, update on proposed fee schedule. I believe it is included in the packet there. We spent, again, this weekend, quite a bit of time, Stuart and I, on this. And we're, typically the user fee resolution is adopted at the monthly meeting for last month. And that's how it's always been done in order to make it feed into the fairly heavy-duty budget work that has to go on for getting out of budget. That didn't happen this time. There was so much feedback from folks that wanted to comment that it was extended. The commission decided to give everybody another whole month on that, so it's been out there for months now. There have been, even this weekend, we took more of the feedback that we had from everyone and tried to compromise and integrate as much as we could and do the best compromise we could for everybody, get everybody's hopefully final feedback in there. And Karen, we have this is not on the website yet, right?
It is not.
It is not. We were holding off to get your feedback here, but it needs to go onto the website fairly soon, hopefully. So if there are any individual items in there you might like to address, maybe Heather, is it proper to do them here, or?
Well, I think it'd be helpful to know what feedback you've taken into account and what changes you've made to this, because there's been several different versions of this. So if this is not the most up-to-date version of what you and Stuart worked on over the weekend, it'd be
We'll
helpful
put
to-
one up to date our network went down this morning, but we got it back up and running, so I can't guarantee. We're going to do our best to try to get one up to date.
So do you have the changes in front of you
I
that
do
you
not.
can tell us?
No, they're scattered all the way through the thing, and there's 10 pages of items here, so there are multiple items on each page. It's just a fine tuning, but
Is this the same that came out with the budget? When you presented, when
This
you
is-
put out the budget, you put out the fees and rates. Is this what you have with us
we
today?
did. We put this 3 May version of it in the budget, the proposed budget.
Okay,
But there is a new one that will come out today.
with different changes.
More cuts.
Any kind of,
So it's,
More cuts to the proposed.
fee raise, so it's hard to comment on anything like you're just saying when we don't know what they are.
If you have specific ones, I could try to address them, but I do not have those here because they're fairly extensive, and I'd like to print it out, get it on the website, and get it in everybody's hands.
Jennifer, the parking passes are still significantly raised. Just
120.
kind of thought that David had addressed that at the last meeting, that the program wasn't there in a sense to make money for the court, but to kind of pay for itself. It seems like it's still a little extravagant. Fees.
Yeah, I can see that forcing like crew members, deckhands to not pay this money and park on the street. 545% increase for a
They're on
parking
the
lot.
street, yeah, they're gonna get, if they're on the street, we're gonna be on the meters.
yeah, but when's that gonna happen? Not this.
Well, not this year, but we should be on meters in by next spring.
They're going all the way down to the docks.
They're going all the way to Eagle Marine.
Who came up with that crap?
Well, you should pay attention with that.
Ripken did.
Rick is your representative, by the way, on the parking committee.
Well, I think Jennifer's comment was good. I mean, we're still sitting here. I'm looking at this again, and we're,
120.
I feel like there's a kick in the ass to me because I'm the one who went in with the port and spent a lot of time putting in these parking areas, getting the leases for them from what began as a private owner and the other private owner at the condos. Now, I swear, if the condo guys are going to want a piece of your money because they're going to want to offset their property taxes they're paying on that lot. So if you're going to charge $120 for a guy to park there, now instead of what it was before is just a profit center to pay for the administration and for the permits, now we're making it as a profit center. If we're doing that, then that's going to change our lease. You need to go to those property owners and discuss this with them. Because now you're creating a profit center out of parking, which is disingenuous to some because you look over at Rogue Ale. Rogue Ale has 68 parking spots that's on public property that they use. Nobody's paying for those. You look at the South Beach Mortgage, nobody's paying for parking over there. So is this the landscape we're going to see? Is that Rogue Ale's going to get charged for all those parking spots? Is South Beach Marina going to pay for their parking?
Well, I think Rogue Ale, if I could be wrong on this, is paying, that's part of their association.
No.
Not on that parking lot, the ones in front?
No, that's Port property.
Okay.
They aren't paying on that. It's not part
Oh,
of
I'm talking about the one on the bay.
It's not part of, on the bayfront, yeah, I'm talking about South Beach. I mean, they're using a tremendous amount of Port property over there for parking.
Right.
It's amazing, there are quite a few aspects of just a little thing like a parking issue.
Yeah.
I met with the city manager last week, and one of the items we discussed, I proposed that the port's been paying $6,000 a year into the parking fund. And I asked if we could use some of that money to pave the 2 rental spots that are on Day there. The one below the museum and the one just on the other side of Local Ocean. And, the city, I understood, actually has some problems with it being gravel because people are kicking gravel out into the street when they come in and out unintentionally. And so, he thought that might be a possibility, and I'm going to follow up with a written request to them. And I told him about what I think it'll cost, and if so, that's one thing we can do, hopefully. A way to show that we're doing something is pave those 2 lots. As far as the leases go, one of the leases has already expired. One of them is going on, has expired but is going on. The other doesn't have a clause for that. Those are being addressed now too.
The paving part would have to be a request to the Bayfront Parking District for those funds. I mean, that would fall under that would be under, well, it'd be under the city, but it would be under the parking district.
But he asked me to copy Derek and him.
Right, that was going, we've done a lot of that stuff. I do have a question.
Does that seem
reasonable?
Well, I talked for a long time on this because it still pisses me off.
Well,
I mean,
on the parking issue,
it's wrong.
before you move off that.
I'm on the parking. I was going to talk about the parking issue.
Okay, go ahead.
Where did you come up with the 120? Because the numbers, when I talked to Derek last, we were looking at about a $60 to $70 fee, and we're looking at, I mean, if I count the parking down there, you're looking at 5 and 3, about 25 spaces. Okay, that you're going to charge $120 fee for. With the port, with the city, with a permit, we're possibly looking at a tremendous amount more available spaces for half as much money. Because with our permit, anybody that was at the last commission meeting when I gave my thing, you're going to have a permit that you could get a parking spot when it opens, you can park there as long as you want. Okay, for $60 a year. Now you're going to charge $120 for 25 spaces that we have to fight each other for?
Yeah, there's no guarantee.
There's no guarantee.
You're got a permit.
So I just look at this and I go 545% increase. It's not sitting well.
I understand. It's going to be a big number, whatever you do, because the $22 a year fee before was whatever it was, 8.5 cents a day before.
But that doesn't. That doesn't matter. You brought that up before. I think. Can you give us a comparison on another port?
I've heard the arguments that almost none of the other ports charge for parking. So I'll throw that out
Fisherman's
there.
Terminal charges parking for crew members. Tenants, mortgage holders have free parking. I mean, if we're going to have a charge, if we're going to get a parking fee, I mean, I think it should be aligned with the city.
Absolutely.
Well, we're already twice over what the city's going to be looking at.
And when we were negotiating this, Don Mann and myself with the city on joining the parking association and what it was going to cost, I mean, it was quite a process because we had to go through how many people were at Port Dock 5, how many were at 3, how many parking spaces we needed, how many we could offset, what this was going to cost us. The port developed some parking at Port Dock 7 to offset it a little bit. That worked out fine. When it got down to that $6,000 number or $7,000, whatever it is now, that's where the parking permits came in and offset that cost. So it was a no cost to the port. Well, I don't know what was generated last year. I think it was $7,000 in parking permits at $22 or something is what I believe it was. And if you need to raise the price up to stay current with what the parking district's charging you, then do that. That's what it's adjustable for. But don't go into the stage of gouging people with a rate that doesn't fit in anywhere else and in any other ports that we're aware of. And it's just bad precedence for the port is. And these are things that have had a lot of work done on them in the past. And I know you like to say the 8 cents a day. So what? Make it 9 cents a day.
What's
sustainable.
Yeah.
What's missing is the narrative about how the increases were derived, why they're, what's the justification for them, and then where the additional money that's being collected, what that's going to, instead of just saying it's going to the budget, how much additional money and what it's going to, I think is missing. I don't know if that's someplace else and it's just not in the packet, but I have to say that the numbers have changed so much based on feedback that it's hard to believe that there was a sound justification for the increases in the first place. Because I haven't seen it. So that's what I'm interested in seeing. Just to understand it, rates have to go up. We all know that. They have to at least keep current with increases to utilities and everything else. And then things like this parking situation. But for me, when I share this with fishermen and they say, well, why is it going to that? I don't have a good answer for that because I don't have the narrative.
And I got a question too. Where's your enforcement money coming from? How much are you getting a year from enforcement on tickets from people in the park that aren't?
Goes to the city.
Okay. Well, you're gonna. I mean,
all we're paying the private firm a pretty fair amount of money.
And you're not getting
but they don't do parking.
And you're not getting any of that back when you have an enforcement in your license. Not.
The private company does do the parking tickets.
For the city.
For the city, yeah.
Not for the port.
Not for the port.
Yes, exactly.
Not for the city.
Because there's also going to be some. I think there's going to be some generated revenue from enforcement when the meters go in because our enforcement's going to go way up. So there is, if you can figure out a way to get some of that money back, you're going to get some revenue from that. If you can figure out a way to get that enforcement money, that's the port property. Because if you don't have a permit, you get a ticket. So the city's getting that money, but you're issuing the ticket, you're issuing the permit, but we're not getting the money. If there's an enforcement problem.
That's not true. We are. Would you get the money?
If it's on port property.
That's what I'm
it's on port property.
The point here is, if it's on port property, how much money are you getting from enforcement right now? And you're probably going to get an increased revenue from enforcement in the future because of the parking. We're going to up. The city's going to up the enforcement.
Force everybody to be lawbreakers.
Yeah, pretty much. So I'm just saying, there's some issues here with revenue that we're not addressing or even
One
looking
thing
at.
that Doug brought up when you talked to the city manager about using the money to pave these lots, they were approached before with this same scenario as paving some areas down by Port Dock 7. Can we use some of that money to pave areas down there in the empty lot for parking and to create parking? The problem with it is using that money then opened it up to the public. And under parking lots on port property, on that property there's W1 and W2, which is a small piece of it's just W2, the rest is W1. W1's a conditional use permit, I believe, for parking lots. And to do that opens it up. And if you're using Bayfront Association money or parking district money, then it's going to open to the public. So you got to be cautious with that.
Also on the enforcement, we're pretty slack on the enforcement. Actually, we don't spend a lot of effort on that. There were two this weekend that have been there for weeks and weeks. They're at Fort Dock 7, and one of the guys just keeps, every time CCB tickets them, he tears it off the next day and throws it away. And so we are going to do something on that. There's two of them there right now like that, but generally we're not out there looking for people that are breaking.
Well, the enforcement side's going to change when the meters go in, and the port, I'm sure, assume will be part of that. The enforcement of dispute. I mean, the port has, the city has really got a lot of teeth now into collecting money. The way they've redone their collection ordinances, or however you call it. I mean, you could get your rig in the future. A rig could get a boot on it. Could be coming. So I'm just saying there's going to be more enforcement.
Sarah?
So with these rates and fees, as far as anyone on the committee being able to weigh in on it, we have a budget committee meeting Wednesday. And that would probably be the last time that they'd weigh in on this, because Wednesday would be perhaps a time that we'd be voting it in as a commission.
Yeah, but you aren't going to adopt the rates and fees at the budget committee meeting. The rates
They're
and fees
part
are
of
going
the
to be
budget.
adopted
I don't know.
this
What do
month,
we do?
right?
The rates and fees should have been adopted at the end of last month in order to feed into the budget.
That's right.
Because they weren't, and they were put off longer. That I am assuming what the committee will do is have a resolution eventually here that does approve the rates and fees for the proposed rates and fees, and then that will, before the end of the month meeting. It can't happen at the end of the month. It happens before. So it's already well past where it's normally done.
Well, I know that. I mean, I recognize that as a fact, and you're in a little bit of a bind here because the rates and fees is what's going to drive your budget. But you aren't going to be able to adopt your rates and fees at the budget committee meeting. You haven't even seen the new rates and fees yet.
But we'll get to see them today.
Yeah, but you see, this isn't the way you do port business. This is the way you do public business, Sarah. You're going to have, I mean, you know, we got a disconnect going on.
Didn't
here.
have a lot of time to look at the budget to begin with, so
Well,
we were behind the 8 ball.
So there was a suggestion at one of the previous commission meetings by a commissioner, I think it was Commissioner Chuck, to do a small increase, I think it was either 3 or 6%, something like that, across the board for everything, and then take more time to actually develop a budget and...
Yeah, and I would assume with the commissioners weighing in, I've weighed in, Walter's weighed in.
All the commissioners have weighed in.
So we'd like to know what's happened to our suggestions, certainly. That we'll find out Wednesday night, I guess, is what happened to my Bible.
Well, I have
that
yours
did.
here. I was going to talk to you after the meeting.
Because I figured it all out.
Then somebody answer the question, is the intent to adopt the rates and fees?
That's
at the
what it
budget
looks
committee
like to
meeting?
me as a commissioner. It looks like that's like we're under the gun and we have to start really thinking that we have to adopt these at some point. And when? We'd have to have another special meeting before the port meeting to adopt rates and fees when they're the driver for the budget, like you said.
Yeah.
So we're having another budget meeting and we don't know if it'll be the last,
And
I
of course,
guess.
people here may not realize the rates and fees can be modified at any time by the commissioners. And so just because this thing might be feeding into the book, it can be changed at any time if there's enough feedback from the public saying this item needs to be changed.
But it's
Has to
such
be
an
changed.
important part of the budget that would change the budget items too.
It's hugely important because that's how you're setting your priorities on your project.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like, you know, you don't want to go through 4 or 5 months and all of a sudden go, well, you know, we need to, let's lower these rates and fees or.
I don't think that would happen.
No,
We have-
it's never happened in the past. We've always adopted rates and fees previous to the budget.
Right.
But,
We actually had staff in this weekend working on this, so we put in 13 hours yesterday on this. So we're plugging away on it. That was yesterday alone. We did the same on Saturday. We ran.
I worked 20 hours this weekend.
Okay, well, I'm sorry if it's that hard. I didn't mean to imply anything there, Heather. But what I'm getting at is we then used that and developed everybody's feedback that we had into the next set of the proposed rates. Those rates then fed into a sheet called incremental revenue from those rates, so that we know about what extra revenue we're going to have. That fed into the next parts of the budget document. So this is, it's not like it's being ignored.
So where is the narrative? Is there a narrative?
well, I know that the commission has asked several times that this is the perfect thing that this users group should be discussing this rates and fees. We don't have the time of day right now to sit here and go through these rates and fees. I'd love to. I mean, I'd put some time aside right now. But, you know, I've got highlights all through the rates and fees. But, you know, and personally, some of them don't affect me. You know, they don't make me any money, don't cost me any money, so I'm legitimately here to talk about it. But if you look at the, you know, just bring up the fuel surcharge at the dock, you know, it's gone up a penny from 3 cents to 4 cents. Well, that's gouging. Okay, this is another sense of gouging. You know, everybody knows why that fuel surcharge was there. It's just to pay a commissioner money who had a fuel dock to offset her costs because boats were taking fuel at the terminal. Right. So back in the 80s, the port gave this gal 3 cents a gallon because the boats were taking fuel up there. All right. When she went out of business, the port continued to collect that money as a slush fund. It brings in $8,000–9,000 a year. The problem is you start raising that up. Right now, you're raising up to 4 cents. You're creating a problem to where now I'm almost thinking the CDON's going to come down to Port Dock 5 and take fuel down there, and you're going to have 6 tankers lined up in the waterfront layering fuel to them. Carson's going to make some money. But that's what's going to happen. You're going to start transferring these boats now that take fuel up there down to Port Dock 5. And I tell you, there's not room for them to take fuel down there. And that's what's going to happen. Now, I was told by the last manager that, well, this is a cost because of wear and tear on the asphalt. You got trucks coming in and trucks going. Okay, well, this kind of goes back to the same parking issue again, If we're going to collect these monies, Heather brought this up, if you're going to collect 3 cents a gallon for fuel, well, so how come that money isn't staying in the terminal in a line item saying to replace asphalt that's worn out by these trucks? And then what is the determination why it should be raised a penny? I haven't heard that determination yet. Why did we raise that? Was it just a sense of area of revenue? Make a few more $1,000s? I don't know. But you're going to cause problems. What you're going to do is boats are going to see this now and they're going to go down to Port Dock 5 and that's going to plug up everybody else big time. When you got a boat taking 40,000 gallons of fuel, it's going to take a day and a half and you're going to have semis lined up in the waterfront. So.
Okay.
That,
noted.
Yeah.
Plus the dock space that it's bring a big rig in there. It pretty much blocks that dock off.
Yeah.
Blocks that whole in.
Blocks the whole in. Boats can't even wouldn't be able to get out.
Yep. So there's always repercussions.
Is there any extra cost or insurance involved with the fact that I think you told me it's our only across the dock fueling dock or something?
The only company pays for the insurance. We have our own insurance too.
So absolutely no insurance,
No,
any
there's no cost
advantage, no
apart.
cost, no nothing.
I've got a question. On page 2 of 10 at the bottom, net disposal and related gear per pound. You raised it up to 25 cents, but I'm under the assumption that the feds have a grant. They have a dumpster down at the terminals just for that they pay for. Where does that money come from or go to?
Are you talking about, was that net disposal? Is that what you said?
Yes, net disposal and related gear. There's a dumpster down there that's on. It's a federally funded thing. Do they pay the port money, or does the feds just put that there and dump it themselves, pay for dumping it? How's that work?
To my knowledge, we don't get any of that, but I'd have to talk to Mark to find out for sure.
But the dumpster's there, right?
Yeah, it's definitely there.
And mostly all the netting goes in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a grand.
I'm trying to push for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like all the netting except the stuff we have for gardens and garbage.
So we should know, Don, how often does that get hauled away?
Oh, really depends on how much network gets done in
Yeah.
a month or two. Right now, it's been full for a month and a half, and they haven't came and dumped it. And I've emailed, but about every 2 months, probably.
Yeah. So who's paying for that?
Gary? No, you didn't hear that.
I'm not paying more.
Yeah.
Actually, you are.
But I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this, and we're right on that. I'm looking at $200% increase to work on my nets. That's getting pretty expensive. Just stretch a net on the ground.
Yeah, we just did that 2 days ago.
Yeah. I mean, that's where does that justification come from?
Okay.
I got a problem with that.
All right. Then, Heather, maybe
Yeah.
addressing this? Okay. When I came in here the first week I was here, one of my first tasks given to me by the commissioners was bring the rates in line with the other ports. And I did that with good intention. And obviously, I don't understand all of the ramifications of every price change all the way through 10 pages of individual line items here. If there are some particular ones that have created consequences that are consequential and I didn't well understand, and we could iron them out right here and now, we could spend a half hour and go through this thing. I'm willing to do that. And I'll go back with our staff tonight and we'll redo what we were working on yesterday. And let's address the parking, let's address a couple of these items. It's not, it was never intended to cause any kind of contention. It was intended to provide the port with more money to fix infrastructure and to do some maintenance.
So all the money being generated from the fee increase is going to maintenance?
I even wrote a proposed resolution that I tried to put through the committee that Sarah can attest to, that said specifically this much of all this incremental revenue will go back into only the infrastructure repairs. And that was also my idea, and it didn't go through for different reasons. So I'm trying my best. And I've been told, okay, just simply go out and compromise with everybody. It's impossible to compromise with everybody. If you got 2 or 3 people, yes, but not hundreds and hundreds. And so no matter what I do is going to be an issue with some people. I can live with that. But everybody, like Sarah and the different folks, have all had different pieces. For example, the liverboard. Sarah had 2 comments that she wanted changed on that. I changed one of them, and I left the other one. And we can go over a couple of those items. So it was a compromise. And if there's some really issues in here that really affect you guys' pocketbooks, and that you want to tell the commissioners that, okay, we can't do this, let's do it right now. Let's solve it.
Well, I think, Doug, and I appreciate where you're coming from and what you're doing, because it's you know, like Sarah said, and Heather says, and everybody says, you know, rates and fees have to go up, you know, and we've done for a long time where we've done to 2%, 3%, you know, 3% here, 2% there, but that never really never covered any infrastructure. It did small items, but it never went in and replaced a section of dock at Fort Dock 7. It never did this, it did that. So I appreciate this. But I think the thing you have to look at is where you cause repercussions that affect other parts of your facilities. Like I bring the fueling situation up for an example. That can cause a shift that can impact other users of your facilities. It can plug up the docks, and it's all legal to do. There's no size limit there. Come in and take fuel. Okay, so that's a repercussion. Another one's the parking issue. The parking issue can cause repercussions. Is more people are going to park in different areas. It's going to change behavior, and that's something you have to be careful of. Is the change of behavior. The other issue is your mortgage rates at the terminals. You know, I think basically almost doubled. But you know what happens there is incremental rates is a fine thing. You know, you adjust it. There's no way of determining, like at the terminals, what other ports charge for rates, because there's really no set rates on that type. And the services are great up there, and the boats are willing to pay. But the problem is you hit that point where these boats are now going to go to Port Dock 5 and tie up. Well, because Port Dock 5 can't support the steel that's being tied up there in November and December and in the early spring during the bad weather months, Port Dock 5 can't support that weight. That's what cost us Port Dock 3 when it completely disintegrated. We lost Port Dock 3 for 3 years in the early 80s because it was overloaded. We had all these big, massive boats tied up at Port Dock 3, and I was one of them, and it exploded in the middle of the night. We lost 100 feet off. How much did we lose off Port Dock 5 that night, Ken? It's 100 feet shorter.
That was a Friday 13th story.
Yeah, we've lost about 100 feet off that. It's just purely overloading. And so when you raise these rates, you got to stop and you got to think, okay, what's going to be the repercussions? Well, it could be that boats are now all of a sudden you're going to say, well, I'm going to drive a spot down at Port Dock 5. Well, they don't fit down there very well, for one thing. They could take up a whole slip. But those are things you have to look at when you're making these changes. And I know you're new here, and a lot of your staff's new, but these are things you have to look at. Because you don't want to change those dynamics. You don't want to change something that's going to cost you a failure of a dock or something, because people now are changing their behavior.
Sarah.
I took 2 hours out of my day because I've been reading, rereading, and I think you guys are pretty swift at seeing what affects you the most. Some of these are little items. I don't know what the new numbers are. I'm a commissioner. I would like to think that the commission has done a good job, as much as we can, of outreaching to you guys, and it was a lack of these kind of meetings that kept this group away from a more prominent role in these rates, but time is ticking away for the budget. And so I just, seeing as we don't know the rates, the new ones, including myself, is just, it took me 2 hours I just put like on the mortgage fees, I just did the annual, what I thought that percent should be, and then said just move up those percents. And so it isn't that hard to go through it, but I don't, I would think that you could rely on your commission to do this, except that now it's all compressed again, and that's where mistakes happen. And so do you feel as though this is going to be brought forward to pass for the budget?
It has to be. We don't have a choice. It has to be. And as David mentioned, it's an integral part of feeding into the budget. I also know that the commissioners have had a lot of input in here. The public has. Every stakeholder, every group of stakeholders just has some of their people inputting it. And fundamentally, before that, our staff, we sat down on these 10 pages of individual line items, and we went through these things, and we did talk about things like ramifications or what other ports, how much they were at, and we discussed a lot of aspects of each one of these. We just didn't pull these numbers out of air.
But you haven't provided that to the public.
And I haven't seen, I've changed this a lot.
And the guys that it affects the most are the ones sitting here. And we've had no input, except until now. And we're we're like 2 days till you guys got a vote on this?
An example. So Port Dock, people that are at Port Dock 7, there's a salmon disaster. There has been for 2 years. We're not sure what Albacore is going to be like this year. Their parking's going up for them. Their mortgage is going up. I don't work for those people, but I feel like it's too much to bear for some people. I don't feel like they've been plugged into the process. And I made that comment at the commission meeting where it was brought up, but without knowing. Right now it looks like it hasn't changed. It's a 60% increase for them. Did you guys take that into consideration? And
On the worst docks on the coast.
right, where you're not guaranteed a spot and they're not great docks.
Or electricity, or
you could get electrocuted.
or anything, yeah.
So I just don't. Go ahead, Mark.
When you go up 200%, it just looks bad. I don't think there should be any increase over 50%.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Steve.
How can it be 200%? At least it looks like it's 100%. When you double it, yeah, any of the items, but the one that you have next 200% next to it was $20 went up to $40, or a lot of some of these. I just think that some of these percentages are bigger than they actually are, because I think they've been computed a little bit wrong. A $10 increase over $40 is $50, and that's 25%. But when you go from 100 to 200 or 50 to 100, that's not a 200% increase. So we've got increases in here that I think shock the hell out of people because they're bigger than they actually are. And they're probably, a lot of these are probably accurate and high, and I'm not in your business, and I understand when you're hit with large increases, it's hard to budget for that yesterday. So, that's something that you're dealing with. But some of these just look higher than they should be on a percentage standpoint.
Steve, that's a good point. I'd like to address that. Basically, let me address that one point there. Initially, we had discussion in staff on this, and we made the conservative approach. First off, of putting the percent changes there right up front, so everybody didn't have to calculate every one of those themselves. Then we made the conservative assumption to take, say, something that went from 20 to 40, and if you divide 40 by 20, you get 2. That's 200%. Now it can be said, yeah, that's 100% also increase. So you can define it in two different ways. We took the conservative approach of going at the high end so that there would be nothing hid from anybody. And you're intelligent adults, you can ignore that if you want and know what the change is from 20 to 40. But we elected to do it that way, not as shock value, but to let people see, this is what the worst case kind of a thing, how you would look at it.
So we have an economist sitting in the audience. What do you think, Phil, about that?
Yeah, well, I would read it as 100. It would be 100%. If you double it, it's 100%.
Yeah. Mark?
And a lot of us are crabbers right here, and we all use the hoist for unloading our crab here. But you got multiple increases. You use the forklift, that's 16.7. You use the man hour, that's 32.1. And then the hoist fee went from 39 to 50. That's 28. So that's all cumulative. So it costs us, each one of those is going up, so it costs a lot to get a lot more to get our crab pots on and off the boat. So it's not just one thing, it's 3 different things that combined cumulative cost us quite a bit more money.
Well, and that having been said, I think that if I knew that the increases at the terminal were actually going to give Don a raise, I might be more interested in that. Because I think he's doing an excellent job.
There you go.
He's doing a great job since he's been there, and the fishermen have worked really well with him. But having that extra money going to hiring a gopher or an engineer, which a lot of us don't think you need, maybe people don't want to pay for that. It really is, where is the money actually going to that's being generated?
Yeah, the gopher was, I'll address each of these items for you, Warren.
Let's stay on rates and fees.
The gopher was meant to take the place of sending people to make $30 an hour to town to buy nuts and bolts, specific minimum wage person there, and it immediately would save money. But rather than get into a discussion on it, I mentioned that to multiple people so many times, I was totally, I couldn't say it anymore any better. So I took him out. He's gone. It's not there anymore. There is no such thing as a handle person in there now. Just out of frustration, because I get sick and tired of trying to explain it. So he's out. I just almost want to give up sometimes, because I've been told compromise with everybody. That's impossible. So that's not there anymore. So the next item on your item that you wanted me to discuss?
Well, I want a narrative about where the money's going that you're generating. I want a narrative about how it was come about. You said that you guys spent hours and hours with staff going line by line.
We don't have a historian sitting there while we're doing that.
Well, I think as a public body, the public deserves to know how the rates increases were generated and what the money's going to. If I'm on a line, then let me know. Jennifer?
I just think, as coming from the fisherman perspective, just like in regards to the tall ship, you guys need to make a comment so we understand what's going on. You need to, I understand you're being transparent, but this is changing all the time, and it needs to be upfront what you're putting this money towards, because from our perspective, we've paid you all this money year after year, and we've already expected this maintenance to have been done every year because we've paid it every year. So now you're coming in and you're exponentially adding fees, increases.
Not me.
The port. Sorry, I'm not the port. So it's confusion. So then you have all these rumors about why these fees are being implemented. And so it goes back to the same thing. You need to put forward the reasoning behind it. And I think as adults, we can understand the port's position, but we need to know why.
I completely agree, and that's why I took the step of writing the proposed resolution that specified what these were going to be used for. I did that, and I did my part, and then I handed it over to the next people. So I can only do so much as a general manager, and the commissioners can only do so much as commissioners, because it's not their full-time job. And I appreciate hearing all this. It's extremely valuable, and I will be at every other meeting that I can attend possibly, because I want this feedback, and I wish to heck I could have got it in earlier, but there were so many other things that were responsibilities that I had to do immediately. This was just one task out of a huge amount of them. And so this is great. I appreciate all this. And I am more than willing to, we have other things scheduled for the day, but I'll put them aside. I'll after this meeting, if you designate 5 or 6 individuals, I'll sit around the table and hammer this out, so that all of the big items that are causing you angst, we can take care of.
Sarah, then Gary.
Well, just speaking to Jennifer's comment, some of these rates and fees are just normal markups that you need to have to stay in business. If we had kept the rates at the net shop the way they were for the last 20 years, we'd be out of business. So some of it is like $5 instead of $3 to keep a boat overnight. Maybe we're giving it away at $2.50. It's some of these are logical, not trying to get anybody. You know, line replacement per foot per time is up 25 cents, but it says 20%. So I do think the percentages are a little misleading. If you look at really what you're paying for on a, you know, different things is what I did when I went through it. I'm like, I didn't look at the percents. I looked at what seemed, boy, that's pretty cheap. Some of these rates wanted me to bring my boat from home and park it on port property because it's cheaper than.
So which ports were you comparing? Because when I printed out the fee schedule in the beginning to the Port of Seattle, this was completely off base. It was cheaper to moorage your boat at the Seattle terminals or Charleston.
Yeah.
The problem is the horse is bolted from the barn, and now we're trying to reorganize it so it doesn't seem so bad.
We had more than one person tell us not to look at other rates and fees because they didn't apply.
But you're saying that you're looking at other ports to try and align us with other ports.
Gary?
Oh, I look at this thing as, you know, that's what this user group's for, because we should be going through these fees, and we should be having a meeting specific for fees. I don't have a problem sitting down doing it. I mean, this affects me big time. And we need to raise, I don't think there's anyone, this table doesn't agree that we have need to raise rates. But we need to sit down with your users, and you can save yourself a lot of hassle by doing that. And now we're supposed to roll this thing out by Wednesday, and we're looking at this. I just don't find that it's not acceptable in my book.
I've also gone back to the commission and let them know that at this stage, I want to get this thing resolved too. It's not
I think
something
all
I
of
can
us,
force to do.
want to get it resolved.
I said leave the rates where they at. Don't even increase them.
Well, I don't think
Maybe,
that's
you know,
realistic either.
whatever you want to do, just do it so that we can move forward.
I don't think that's realistic either. I think we need some increase. The docks are falling apart. We've got to figure out what to do, and we've got to figure out what what affects each other, and what's realistic and what isn't. And I'm not trying to bash your staff, but sit down on a Sunday with no input from your users, trying to come up with fees is not going to get the job done.
And not to be argumentative on it, but from the beginning, I have had people in there, and I've been out talking to folks, and we've had a lot of feedback from a lot of people on this. It hasn't been the staff just setting the numbers.
I'm just looking at the people that you're going to get the best feedback of the people who are sitting in this room, and then to address the fact that of comparing the different ports. I love it. Either way, compare us to a Seattle. I don't think it's fair. We're not Seattle.
But I did the Charleston. Coos Bay. Of course, their margin in Coos Bay is high, but Charleston is low. I looked at Charleston's rates. They don't
look at
compare to
Charleston's
what we're
docks. They're crap.
No, look at our docks.
Our docks. I think our docks are. I'm not saying they're great. I've been over on 7. On 5, they're better.
I'm speaking to the comparisons
crappy
that we're making. If we're going to go out and make comparisons,
I'm just saying comparison. I think is a hard thing to do.
yeah, it is a hard thing.
Well, that's why you need just some. So what's the rationale for each of these increases?
That's why I think we have
And
to
where
sit.
is the money going to? I read the resolution that didn't pass. I don't remember it having the detail of where the money's going to, but if I'm wrong.
The issue I had with it is just that it was like, unless we have to spend the money elsewhere.
And it was also only a percentage of the
Right.
incremental income, if I recall.
And what income? We didn't have that identified yet, and
And what
it was
about
just
what
a
you're
cart
going to
before
lose?
the horse.
We've heard from charter boat owners, you heard that in public comment, I'm not even taking my boats to South Beach if you keep these rates in here.
Okay, I just have a question, because you're talking about things are going up, costs are going up and stuff. So I have a question in the budget, if you look at the incremental cost. So electricity, it shows it's going down 1.4%. Now, was the cost, is that fiscal actual cost, or was the budgeted cost from last year that we're going down to? And then if you look at refuse and recycling, it's going down 4.5% from budgeted last year. But we're raising these rates higher. So electricity, you're raising electricity rates at the terminals, at Sweet Stock, but it's showing here a percentage drop. And that's kind of strange, because usually you can always rely on electricity going up 4%, 5%. We know for a fact that water's going to go up in Newport probably tremendously, but I don't see that in here. I see reduced rates in your budget, but I see costs going up in the budget also. So I'm not following this. Why are we showing a reduction in our general fund costs, but you show increases elsewhere?
We even, on that incremental page, we added another column yesterday to make it even more clear too of what percentage of the various revenues contribute towards the court's income, so that we'll be able to focus on the most important ones. So that we're attempting to do the best we can.
Well, is there any thought to like just raising everything 8% across the board, 10% or something like that? What is the average of everything that's raised here? From what I see, it's got to be like 30%.
Well, it's ballpark. Right now, the way the numbers set now, the incremental revenue increase is going to be on the order of high 600,000s for the number. And so we make revenue of 33 million. So right there, you can see the percentage.
18%, something like that.
Ballpark. That's a quick ballpark.
Which is still a lot. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it's like every time we turn around and open your wallet, get it here, get it there, get it here.
Absolutely. And if you just do if you just pick a number like 10% and say, okay, we're just going to apply 10% across the board, well, that's not fair to the prices that were already where they should have been. Like say the recreational marina on the moorage. We didn't change that at all. It was already where it needed to be. So I have a lot of problems doing across the board things.
Well, I guess we'll wait to see that new numbers to have a little better idea.
Push it.
Well, I kind of feel like, this committee should have met before now to provide input into this. And now our backs are against the wall. We don't have all the complete information in front of us to make recommendations. I mean, we're providing some feedback off the cuff on things that we see on here. But
we can solve the whole problem by simply leaving the rates where they're at. The commission can instruct me to do that, and then we'll adjust them as we go into next year. We can adjust them anytime. It doesn't make a huge difference on the budget. I just told you how much that extra income is, and then we can get on with the budget and do that. I'm willing to any kind of reasonable suggestion. If we try to adjust individual rates, my thought there is the best thing would be if we could sit down for a couple of hours and I just address the things that people are screaming about, and let's find out why, and let's fix them. And that's going to go a long ways towards making this whole rate sheet more palatable and more useful for the board for next year. But I'll do whatever folks might want to do.
Heather? Yeah. I mean, it's not like we could have a meeting with this group just on the budget that would last 2 or 3 hours. And then maybe 3 months down the line, you could have that. If we're going to have an increase, you could have it. To me, that sounds like at least you're communicating with the fishermen here, and we're going ahead in a slow, thoughtful method. And everybody have a better understanding of what's going on. And we can go line by line down it. And I think the commissioners would probably have a better feeling about it if they had the fishermen's back when they vote for that increase.
So
I got just something to comment on. Is Pete's here. Pete's on the agenda. I thought myself that Pete should be at the beginning of this meeting, because the things we're discussing here, as a standing committee, the things we're discussing about rates and fees and it's going to affect you and how much money you make. These are things that Pete needs to be talking about. Sooner or later, we need to have that discussion to understand what this group is possible of doing and what we can discuss. I mean, I've spent the time over the years looking at the city's municipal code, their committees, they run 21 committees, you know, all their guidelines, specifications are in their municipal code, but, you know, it's pretty clear what you can do and what you can't do. So, you know, I mean, we could do what Mark says and go through that. You know, it doesn't really matter to me, but I think Pete should have a say here pretty soon of.
I apologize
Oh, yeah?
again, I'll take the fault of Pete not being at the beginning of the agenda. Pete was asked by this group to be at the meeting
Right.
after the draft agenda was put together, and I guess I should have assumed that, looking at the money that we paid Pete, he probably ought to be at the beginning of the
See, you got a nice raise, Pete, in the budgets.
You're
You're doing really well, buddy.
You could have saved money by getting me out the door fast.
Well, that's what I think too, but it's up to the group how they feel and the chairman, but I think we need to hear something pretty soon.
Pete,
You're good?
I'm good.
All right. Heather and Sarah and I think it was Patricia at the time, and Doug, we discussed the fact that this is a public group, has public records law, has public meetings law that it has to comply with. And I've got some concerns. Some of you may have seen the email I sent out. We've also got a FOIA request, which is a Freedom of Information Act or Oregon Public Records request. And I worry about the 5 commissioners, or 4 commissioners, soon to be 5 commissioners, and how they can trip up on the law. And then I find out there's 11 more people that could possibly trip up on the law. So, long story short, I think we could almost have a meeting solely with me, possibly even an executive session, explaining all the ins and outs of being in a public group of this nature. So I think David's correct. Not that you want to be cautious about everything, but everything you say in here is obviously public record. And there are people out there. David mentioned there's committees in the city. There's arts committees that nobody cares about. I shouldn't say that, sorry. There's all kinds of committees out there that you don't have adversaries that are advertising, looking for somebody. And so, as I mentioned to Sarah and Heather, if this was a arts committee, I don't care if you folks meet in a hot tub. I don't care if you folks meet. I don't care what you folks do, how you talk about things, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, we've got a fairly serious adversary. Seattle law firm, San Francisco law firm, who are scrutinizing everything we're doing. And so, not to freak anybody out, but be cautious how you talk about this stuff. Be cautious about talking in smaller groups and then relaying that information to other groups. David knows the routine because he was a commissioner, but if you need some tips, talk to one of the commissioners. If you're willing to give me a call. Heather has gotten some of the information too, but because this is a user group, I think the information the commission gets is really, really useful. Obviously, the general manager benefits from it, the commission benefits from it, but my dander gets up when I know that there's a adversary out there who is looking for anybody to trip up, and that's where the whole brouhaha started in the first place. So I appreciate the fact you folks have all may have been in committees and groups before, never had anybody warn you about anything, but this is a little different. So to get into more details, I'd have to have an executive session, but that's kind of the general thing. If the commissioners are okay with it, you folks can give me a call. Like I said, it's probably been cheaper to have this at the beginning of the meeting, and it's even cheaper to contact either the port manager or one of the commissioners and have them contact me, but just keep that in mind.
So Pete, I'm actually glad that you've sat here since the beginning of the meeting. Have you seen things that are troubling to you, that the way we're acting? Have you had complaints levied against the committee members or any of us outside of this?
No, I actually think this is the proper use of that. I can't say that somebody wouldn't make hay out of whatever they think they can get out of the minutes and records. But yeah, this is defensible. This is actually the kind of thing user groups are supposed to do. This is the kind of thing that people are supposed to work out. People need to know, yeah, we want to, let's say, improve our docs, but how we're going to get from point A to point B. And so all the input that the commissioners and the staff can get is useful. But when politics are involved, where we've got, like I say, law firms that get paid by the hour a lot more than I do, looking for ways to scurry something out of something, I just want people to be cautious. But no, everything I've heard so far has been totally on the up and up.
And I would just add that for them to somehow intimidate us into not doing this, they win that way too. So I think that if you want to be, and everybody, Pete's not going to say it, I'll say it, it's a longshoreman. So if you want to be, if you don't think that you can meet the requirements of serving on a committee that has to abide by public meeting laws, then you need to leave, you need to resign from the committee and find someone else who can, because it's important. And if you have questions about what that means exactly, I think what it means is, I don't know what the majority would be, number of people, but that would be, you know, you three and Jean on the dock, potentially, or 6 of us, talking about this outside of this process where it hasn't been publicly noticed. I can talk to Jean about it as much as I want. I can talk to whoever individually. And this body has no power. That's the other thing. We are not a decision-making body. We decide on recommendations, feedback to give to the commission, but beyond that, we don't have any power. Is that correct?
Well, the nuance is, though, that you can direct a body that does have power, and that those recommendations turn into some sort of a law or ordinance. So that part won't protect you. The other nuance I worry about, up until about 2005, let's say, 2 people could talk and say, hey, by the way, go talk to those other 2 people and tell them what we discussed. And that was a serial meeting. It used to be legal. Actually, we used to advise people to, the way you get out of the quorum issue is to do a serial meeting. Lo and behold, Lane County commissioners ruined that for all of us. And now there's a case out there which says that serial meetings are improper also. So 2 people can't be talking and say, oh, by the way, tell those other 2 people, because then sooner or later you've got a quorum involved. So that's one thing to be concerned about. And the other thing is private communications or public communications on a private manner. Those are only 2 things that really worry me for my commissioners. And, excuse me, maybe I should have taken that bottle of water. The only 2 things that really concern me is people think that they're doing normal things, which they are doing normal things. Problem is the law's kind of gotten abnormal in this area. Because how else are you supposed to ask what those 2 decide or what those 2 feel like if you're not talking to them? But it's gotten strict enough to where, unless you're like on an arts committee or something where there's no adversaries. Yeah, I keep picking on the arts. A motorcycle committee. Let's say it's a motorcycle committee. Sorry, Dave. But you know, if it's a committee where nobody is going to be an adversary, I think people still do that. I mean, that's just normal human interaction. But once I'm put on notice, and this was probably 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, we got the request, and I go by who the law firms are. I mean, I figure anybody willing to spend that kind of money to send a request is probably thinking we're trying to send a message, which they obviously are. That I tell people just be extremely cautious at that point. And so even that email is calculated for a reason. If somebody's going to read that email someday, some judge possibly, local DA, you know, whoever it is going to read that email. So a lot of what I started doing was calculated for the very purpose of what we're discussing here. So I think the nuance is, even though you're not doing it yourself, you're recommending something to people who are doing it. And so that won't help you if you've got a determined adversary.
So if everybody here is comfortable with the position they're in, comfortable knowing what Pete just said, is that, you know, and I look around this table here and I don't think that I've discussed anything outside of this meeting with anybody at this table as far as a recommendation or anything like that. And I think everybody's probably that way, but if you're uncomfortable with this position.
The thing I like is everybody seems to have their own personal understanding of what they like or don't like. They're not. This person isn't saying they don't like something because they talk to somebody else. Everybody seems to have their own opinion, which that will save you. If as long as you're not trying to gather opinions from other people's discussion, I don't see anything that ever end up in court.
But they're invited to come here and provide their input.
Correct.
Right. And encouraged to do so.
Correct. The problem where you trip up is, let's say Bob wanted to get 5 other people thinking about something he wanted to propose. Then they're not talking about their own opinion, they're now talking about Bob's opinion. That's a little different. Then you're politicking outside the thing. It's better for Bob to propose what he's going to propose in here. If people agree, fine. If they don't agree, but that's when you start getting in trouble, is when you're actually working things out before you walk in here.
Right.
And that includes at the Road Brewery, and 5 of you are having a beer, and you decide to bring up the rates and discuss it, and a small timberland owner sitting at the end of the bar and hears you, and the next phone call's to the ULW or whatever they're called. That's what it's about, seriously.
Yeah.
Sarah, you had a...
Well, just being a commissioner, those rules always were hard for me to get used to. I'm still working on it. But, I make sure that I don't say anything to anybody in a conversation that, yes, I can talk to you, and I can talk to you. But you just have to be super careful not to say, oh, I was talking to Donnie the other day, and, he said that blah, 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 and so anyway, I just wanted to let you know that that's what Donnie was saying, and you just can't do that. You cannot have casual conversations about what goes on at any meetings or any subject.
Yeah. How many people does that take with this group to have a quorum, private conversation?
I just keep it to 3. I don't talk. I never go past talking to
but a quorum
another
is at
person.
least 7.
But see, with the serial concept, though, you can actually only have 2 talking.
Yeah,
but if one of you say, hey, go talk to those other 2, now you got 4.
Yeah.
And then those 2 say, hey, by the way, you can't network anymore like that. That's what I'm saying. Up until 2005, that is how we got around it. Not that it was illegal. That was the method you did. And now you can't even do that. So you pretty much have to show up with your own opinion and propose whatever you're proposing in this process. And like I say, nothing to get too fearful about, but it's also not a motorcycle committee. I mean, this is legitimate people looking into legitimate stuff.
So we discussed that we may change that this would still be a port committee, but change it to advisory committee, or something about that. Is that something that we should pursue, or?
Yeah, the resolution changes it, or the resolution has it reporting to the commission, which is probably the way you would normally set things up, because the commission wants to hear stuff. You could actually have, because a lot of this is rates and fees, you could actually have it be to Aaron, or have it be to somebody else, and have that person propose it. And the resolution be changed to have it be a user group, operations, let's say, or whoever else the general manager designates, which is a little less, but I think the technicality of the law that I look at is advises a group that can effectuate change. Well, Aaron already can effectuate change. Doug already can effectuate change. If you're advising them, I think that separates everybody having to concern themselves. And so that resolution can be altered to maybe have just who the person is that gets the information different.
I got a couple of items that might impinge there too to help out.
Okay.
I couldn't see it or I couldn't make it.
I said okay.
That's all right. 2 items. I, as an entrepreneur and businessman and engineer, I look at this thing and I see it as a matter of risk. And we can minimize the risk by doing something very simple, and that's just, as he was just saying, having the committee or whatever you want, whatever it wants to be, CFUG, report to someone that's not a commissioner, then that solves the whole thing. You no longer have to keep minutes. You no longer have to have
That's wrong.
Well, you no longer have the I'll let Pete address that. I'm not an attorney. You no longer have to have worries about the public meeting laws. So I think it's very simple, and I see.
You keep bringing that up
I
to
do.
me. We don't have to. We can meet in secret. You said we don't want to do that. This is a public body with transparency. That is the whole goal.
I use that as an
we
extreme
don't
example.
want to meet in secret. We don't want to not have to worry about public meeting laws. At least I don't.
I don't think we have to.
The second item I want to interject here, and I'm going to have to say this extremely carefully, about these law firms that are impinging on some of our activities right now. I was okay with some of that when I came in, but it has escalated recently, and there's some other things that have occurred that I can't discuss unless it's going to be with the attorney and under the a separate meeting with the committee without the public there.
Executive.
Thank you. I was struggling with that word. It was on the tip of my tongue. And it's escalated to the point that if I were looking at taking this job right now, there is no way in the world that I would consider even taking this job with what's happened recently and some of the things that you guys are not privy to. So, throw that out there.
That's helpful. Pete?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is one extreme or the other, so it doesn't sound like the group wants to go that direction. What I would suggest, and I think you folks should have an executive session. I mean, I think this group, if it's going to be public, you need to hear, as long as the commissioners are willing to be okay with that, you need to hear the straight poop on everything that's happening, because here's the thing. If somebody gets charged with anything or something happens, the port doesn't indemnify Sarah even. The port doesn't indemnify anybody. Everybody's on their own dime. And so a lot of times you can win in court and you spend $50,000 to prove you won. So I'm not trying to scare anybody, because I think it is a useful thing. But I think we should talk in executive session so everybody understands what they personally are facing. I can't defend even Sarah. I can't defend the commissioners. They're on their own on that level. So if you folks schedule another meeting and people want to continue on in this method, which I think it's great, I don't have any problems with it. Just right now we have adversaries. Then I think we should have an executive session so everybody can ask me directly a question.
And an executive session is the whole committee, the actual members of the committee.
Whoever you folks decide. Could be everybody in here, could be everybody in the press, could be whoever else you invite. But yeah, but that at least you guys are sworn to confidentiality.
And then you need an ORS statute too.
I will get one.
So what would it entail on an ORS?
It'd be subsection F and H. You can always ask legal advice under subsection F and H. But I think it's wise, only because I actually knew one of the Lane County commissioners that got caught in that, and he personally spent $80,000. So I can't say that I can keep it under, to a certain amount. But he spent $80,000 and got out of it. But and I think port commissioners actually pay money. I mean, Lane County commissioners actually pay money, whereas port commissioners are volunteer. You folks are volunteer. I'd be remiss if I just let you guys walk out here thinking this is great. Again, if this was a simple committee dealing with something simple where I wasn't worried about it, I would be not worried about it. But I can actually share some of the details. And frankly, and Doug may have his other reasons why he's thinking this way. I don't care. That's between the group and whatever Doug is thinking. My perspective is purely on the legal risk end of things. And I've talked to you. Yeah. Okay.
Questions? Bob?
Yeah, if we were to consider, trying to shake these constraints of being a standing committee to the commission and reporting directly to the commission, at that point, who would have the power to call a meeting? Who would have the power to decide membership, or
it would be
would that be our chairman then?
Yeah, it would be similar to the harbor master or Aaron or Doug just walking up and down the dock. I mean, literally would not be much more legal than that, and that doesn't feel right because that seems like you're being marginalized in some respects. But as long as you get the point across, if you say, hey, $8 is too much, or $2,000, it's going to cost me $2,000 more a year, that information still works its way to somebody. So if it's kind of an informal way, or I guess it's more formal, but it's kind of a way of getting information to people, and you can find a way to calculate to do that, find a way to do it. but it wouldn't be much different than those guys just walking the docks and telling you that. But the moment it starts going to public meeting, public records, keeping minutes, and I'm not even saying if this blows over that this shouldn't go back to the way it is. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying whatever you guys can do to get the information out is whatever you folks normally do, which is right now you just go to the port office. I guess people just go to the port office now and tell people, hey, the hoist is broke or the dock's falling apart. If you folks meet at a bar or somewhere else and we don't know that there was a meeting, that could work. And then it's the other extreme, like I say.
Yeah, I'm not concerned personally, and I think that the message needs to go to the Port Commission. Whatever is generated from this needs to be delivered to the Port Commission. It's the Port Commission that needs the information. Doug, Aaron, they work for the Port Commission. The Port Commission directs them. They bring information to the Port Commission, but they work for the Port Commission. The commissioners work for us as the public in this port district who pay the taxes. So that's the chain of reaction, and that's how it should be presented as to the Port Commission for direction. So, and like you said, every port has advisory committees. Every port has standing committees. Every port I know of, all the way from Coos Bay, Astoria, everywhere you look, they all have committees because commissioners don't have the time to sit and dig through all this. We've done it in the past, and it's excruciating, and it takes a lot of time. That's where these committees can come forward and present it to the commission. The commission goes, oh, okay, this is great. This is what we need to do. This is hundreds of years of information coming out here that all these guys have compiled, then that's what we need to do. But just to have just a formal, not even a formal get-together and discuss these things and give it to Aaron or give it to Doug, it needs to go to the commission. And that's my feeling as an ex-commissioner, is that that's the information I want, and that's what these commissioners have asked for time and time again at the meetings, is they want this information. So we know we have one issue, and what's driving that issue is any discussion about terminal operations. Okay? I know it's going in the records, going in the minutes, whatever, but that is the main issue that you're talking about. Any discussion about terminal operations.
It's no longer that issue. It's expanded way beyond that.
Well,
see, we need to have an executive session. Dave. I can
executive session.
We can't do it right now.
No,
because
you
it's
can't
not
do it
public
now.
notice.
We're just kind of handing around stuff, and it's hard, it's stupid to even.
Executive session and open it back up.
Well,
I'm going to give public notice.
Yeah, I'm going to get to it. But I think it would be useful. I think it would be useful to have an executive session.
So is it worth having a conversation around Mark's suggestion now, or after or an executive session about having a meeting to go line by line through the proposed rates?
No, I think that's.
Does that violate?
No, you guys are in session. No, nothing
how
here.
about when Doug suggests that 5 people meet with him, 4 or 5 people, to discuss rates and fees?
Yeah.
What issue is that?
That seems.
I don't know. It's 4 or 5 quorum. I don't know.
From what Ted and I both did, like Bob's sitting on crab commissions and trawl commissions and stuff. When we've gone into executive session, we've called for it, but it's always on the agenda, so we can do that.
Oh.
So what we could do is amend the agenda right now and put it on the agenda. Can we do that?
Yeah.
We still need 24-hour notice.
Yeah, meeting minutes.
But from now on, we should put it on there.
That's why we always have it on.
So if it's always on your agenda, then you're covered.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how the port does it.
But they better not be doing it that way.
Well, they were. That's how it always was.
Yeah, we're not doing it that way anymore.
Okay.
That must have been never mind.
I guess what I'm hearing is that we need an executive session pretty soon, and we need to have 24 hours notice in order to do that, and we need to make sure you're available.
Yeah, because what people don't know freaks them out worse than if they just know, but there's only so much I can say.
Well, I can imagine
Well,
knowing
no,
who we're working with. I can only imagine what it is. So.
Yeah, exactly.
You need a motion.
Huh? No, I don't think so. Are there any other questions for Pete on this? We still have a few things to cover on the agenda.
Anybody confused?
So anybody need me? See you guys. See you guys some money.
You've done enough.
I'm done enough.
Thanks,
Call the wife.
I can't believe you charged for that, honestly.
Could we call, I have a question, could we call a 24-hour notice for a meeting tomorrow to go over fees tomorrow as a group? Or we could schedule just that and an executive session?
Well, 24 hours would have to be sometime in the afternoon, right? Because it's already almost 11.
And I've got other things on the budget that would tie me up, but I'm certainly willing to, after this meeting or part of this meeting, extend it, sit down with however many of whoever you designate and hammer these out. It would greatly relieve me to have your feedback into these rates and finish the budget.
And I won't be available tomorrow.
I'm going to the Pacific Council
I gotta go to
tonight,
Brookings and buy
so.
a ton of salmon this afternoon.
Yeah, but I'll be back on Wednesday night.
And the budget has to be done on Wednesday?
No. The budget committee is meeting Wednesday night, and the budget, the intent is they intend to approve, the purpose is to approve the budget then. And there's no time between then and the end of the month where we have our monthly meeting where we have to, the commissioners have to approve or not approve, the budget committee approves it, the commissioners do something else. Adopt it. And then we basically appropriate the funds, and then those funds are started, they're used on July 1st. So that time, because of the different official notices we have to do, the state LD forms and what have you, are all chalk step right now from our way through. But if indeed we can sit down and hammer these rates out, I'll get those rates in ASAP, and that will all flow through, and the process should move forward. So I don't care if you set the rates at zero personally as an individual. I want to solve this thing and move forward with the budget. And I'm sure some of you can understand where I'm coming from on that. So I please, let's sit down and not the whole line items,
I
but
don't
the
like
ones that affect
having
you.
my back against the wall in such a short time.
I didn't set it up that
I'm
way,
not,
Heather.
Doug, I'm talking, please.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
So what I would like to see this committee recommend is, or what I would propose is recommended, is that the budget from last year is rolled over and the rate increase from last year is rolled over. They can both be changed at any time. Is that right, Sarah?
I'm not sure of that.
And take the time that it takes to actually spend time going through the budget so that we understand it, understanding the narrative, and providing the input on the rate increases that need to go in. Trying to get it done before Wednesday seems
Well, there is
really
another week.
difficult.
That's next week is before the budget committee, or before the regular
You
work
still
meeting.
have a gun to your head.
Yeah.
The timing.
Yeah.
Heather,
Believe me, I know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
Are you suggesting that whatever the rate increases were last year, that those increases be applied again this year?
To get it started, to meet the deadlines that apparently have to be met. And I don't doubt that they have to. I think it's laid out, I don't know if it's the bylaws or how it's laid out, but yeah, I think you have an increase and then roll over the budget from last year until you, and pass that, until you.
Have a meeting to specifically address it.
Doug's right, you can raise the rates pretty anytime. I mean, you need that.
Do I need to raise my hand to speak, or everybody else that notices is doing that? So what do you want me to do?
Grovel.
Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Heather. I think your suggestion of fixing the rates and increasing the rates this year the same as they were done last year, the same percentages, item by item, is fine. It's workable. It doesn't hurt anybody, I don't believe. But not roll over the budget. That's another whole thing. Those rates then would feed into where we're at in the existing budget process. The budget has many, many other items in it besides rates. That's one item. And so that will enable us to finish the budget, get it out there. The budget can always be done later in the year on a supplemental budget and changed as well by the commissioners. So it's a lot of work, but it can certainly be done. So this is it's not and even doing it the way you just suggested isn't an easy solution, because now staff has to go in and plug all those numbers in to all the zillions of stuff that we've developed to feed the state forms. We can do that. It is doable. The other, I'd say either do that option or spend an hour sometime after this meeting and let's just hit the worst items that you feel are the most egregious. Let's fix them, and then do that, and then we'll modify the budget, modify the rates at our time as we have time in the fiscal year as it comes up.
We still haven't seen what you proposed.
I can get that out once we get back to the office.
Yeah, the new numbers, we haven't seen those yet.
Exactly, and there are, I think, only one of them that Sarah suggested an increase on something that we screwed up on. She caught it, but everything else is decreased.
I guess what I don't understand then is a budget, like when I do a budget for MTC or you guys do for your business, I figure out how much money I need to bring in order to meet the budget. If we were to just roll over a 3% increase or whatever it was from last year, that will not match up with the expenditures I'm imagining that are in the budget. So
it will when I get done with it. It will balance. I'll have to make it balance, and I'll do that. And it's not going to be a huge amount of money. If you go with last year's increases, assuming those increases were on the specific items that are the highest, I've gone back and looked at it. It wasn't across the board. It was different for different items. If those items are such that they are the ones that contribute to 80% of the revenue for next year, then it's not going to be a big difference. So right now we're looking at an extra, say I just pull a number, don't quote me on this, but say $680,000 extra money coming in the way the thing sits now with the new numbers we have. So it will be somewhere between $300,000 and $700,000 if we go with that route. It will probably be in that $400,000 or $500,000. And that's fine. I can build the whole budget with that, and I'll make it balance. And then we have all the time in the world to discuss things as much as we want and get everyone's feedback into the rates item.
And this would just be a recommendation.
I'm just recommending.
No, I mean.
No, what we do is just a recommendation.
Right, to the commission.
Well, and it's not my decision either. I would take your recommendation and I would then go to the committee or the commission. And if they approve it, then I'll do what we need to do that.
More questions or comments or discussion? I'm just one committee member, so
I think the group needs to sit down and go over these rates somehow and spend some time.
Well, with some time. I like the idea of pushing this off and doing exactly what Doug was saying and you were saying.
We got to push it off.
Well, we got all year basically. If we just roll it over to where it was last year.
Yeah.
And then we've got time to set up meetings with the executive session.
And can I clarify, you don't want to roll it to where it was last year. You want to take the rate increases of last year and apply them.
Right. Well, that's what I mean.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And I would do that, but I wouldn't say that Ted, I wouldn't say you have all year to
6 months, 3 months, whatever.
Yeah, I would say because there's some stuff in here in the budget, some of the priority items, Port Dock 7, getting some floats out there, some pilings on the end of 5, some pilings at 7. We really need some of this stuff. And the problem is the lead time that Aaron needs to start getting it done. It's a long lead time.
That's why I'm pushing.
We don't want to miss our in-water work window coming up in November. If we need to drive piling, we need to do that. So I would say that if we were going to go back and just reinstate the increases that were last year, that we set a timeline of moving ahead with rates and fees and solving our issues and do a supplemental budget. But sooner than later is
right. You think about 6 days or something, or 3 months, 4 months? Doesn't matter to me.
I'd say start working on it.
Well,
right
the
away.
rates take effect.
That's what I.
For an ending date.
I'd suggest that you just, as soon as possible is a good one, and say, don't make it longer than 6 months or
Not to
whatever.
exceed.
So
Not to
rather than
exceed.
trying to set a tight deadline, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that
Yeah.
the staff has to do, and a lot of things that have to be done. It's more complicated than just a simple budget like you
Yeah.
think of.
Because I'd like to say, it's just instead of just going, we kick that one down the road for a while. It's not. It's something that needs to be addressed real soon. And since we still have ongoing changes that Doug's talking about, yes, I would support that. But I would also support. I'd put my time into it, working right away on it, getting some of these issues solved.
I guess what I'm confused about then is, I think what I heard you say, Doug, was say you did the increases, the rate increases from last year, and that's going to generate somewhere between $0 and $300,000, and that the $300,000 to $700,000 is what roundabouts with the new rates would come up with. And you said it's not that much of a difference.
I'd say not 0. I'd say it's going to be between 300 and 500, right in that range probably. If you use those existing rates, just my gut feel on it.
So if it's not that much of a difference, I would think that you'd still be moving forward with your projects. Because the reality is, 200,000 or 300,000 more. Are you holding up projects because of that?
Oh, no.
I guess I don't understand.
It's pretty
that.
substantial in the budget. I go through the budget and look at the priority items.
Okay, but you just said we have to get things done as soon as possible because
true.
Aaron's got stuff planned.
Well, there's stuff that they're on your
But
priority.
it wouldn't happen without the increase, I guess is what I'm getting
Yeah,
at.
without the increase, some of this isn't going to happen. I mean, it also has to do with personnel issues. There's a broad sweep of things that takes into effect. You know, I mean, you look at the personnel increases as far as maintenance personnel. You know, we're adding some personnel people. You know, well, we might have to kick some of those down. You know, and that's something that I beat on the doors for years, was adding more positions. You know, and because Dock 7's gotten so busy, it takes up all of our time. We need more employees, boots on the docks, doing this work. So that will, you know, that cuts into all that. You know,
There are other places I can cut besides personnel too, as you well know. And we have some serious contingencies we've added in this year that weren't in there last year for various things that could come up and to give us opportunities. So we have room. I won't call it wiggle room, but we can adjust that readily, and we can stick with the projects, the 21 projects we have on there now. We'll still pursue them, and at any point in time, the commissioners too can kill any one of those projects, and all they have to do is simply say no on the funding on it when we get ready to do it. So you still have full flexibility there, but I think your idea, Heather, is a good one, and it would allow us to get the budget done, and the budget committee will, I can almost guarantee you that the budget committee will pass the budget, there are 5 commissioners on that committee and 5 freeholders who are mostly businessmen, bank presidents, what have you, met extensively with them on the budget items, and the 5 freeholders are ready to pass the budget. And so basically you need one commissioner to say yes. And if it passes, then the commissioners have to, at the monthly meeting, at the end of the month, on the, I think it's 26th or 29th, Karen?
Right.
I think it's 29th.
26?
Which is it?
26?
At that meeting, then that's where the teeth are, and where the money gets appropriated, and then we move forward into the new year. And then we have lots of breather room to go back and revisit if we want to adjust the rates any way we want to do, and adjust the personnel, and adjust the capital improvement projects, and adjust the contingencies, and all the other items that play into a budget, and do that in a logical, non-rushed manner, and do a supplemental budget sometime maybe before 6 months are up into the fiscal year, and move forward from there. So it's just kind of you're going to do a fine-tuning effectively of the budget at that period.
I guess that all is assuming that there'll be a user group committee. We haven't really decided who's coming, going, staying. the executive session to learn more, I guess, to make everyone's final decision kind of thing, because it's super valuable to the commissioners. I just have to say that the whole port structure of people is pretty beaten down, and so I was told originally, like, oh, that's going to be a supplemental budget, we'd have to do everything over, this is ridiculous, we've killed ourselves already. It just is unfortunate that this is how it's been rolled out, so I don't know if anyone is going to give up and stuff, but not having a user group to rely on for good information as a commissioner, then my hands just feel tied. So because we've had an upsy-downsy time with this group, we really want to rely on you guys to help us through this seemingly might be a longer drawn-out process again.
Did you have a comment before?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I can't answer.
Okay.
So ultimately, the commissioners are going to make the decision on this, right?
They make the decision on.
So, and I heard a lot of discussion by this user group. Does the user group actually have a recommendation to the commission what they want to see happen with this rate study?
Well, I put one out there and we're discussing it.
I could so move
Yeah.
that the committee recommends to the commission that we apply the same rate increases to the fee schedule as were applied last year.
17,
17.
Yeah, I guess my own, and I know I proposed that, but I thought it was 3% across the board. Now I'm told it's not. So
Well,
without knowing that, I feel a little weird.
No.
But it can't be. Do you have it?
Well,
Some
no,
were
because when you go 3%
5.78,
across the board, that means
5.87.
parking, fuel surcharges, everything all goes
Yeah.
up 3%. That's not what happens.
Okay.
Fuel charge hasn't gone up in years. It's
Okay.
it's incremental.
I
what
think
it does.
we're
I don't
originally
have
up
it
over
with me.
5, up close to 6%.
Okay.
And if Heather, if you wanted to even fine tune this process a little more, I would suggest you might say in your motion, or adjusted motion, that it be the specific sections of the rates that affect this group, whereas let us go with what we have for the recreational marina, for the RV park, for those, because we spent a lot of time with those folks on those items. The charter item is one item, we've taken that out too. We're proposing that we're listening to you. We're proposing that the charter boats in South Beach be able to use, be subject to the charter rates from the commercial marina. So we've fixed the liveaboard problem by cutting the suggested increase back drastically and given them a grandfather clause that anybody that's in there now, from now on, is only going to have a 2% increase per year. So it's not going to suck into their Social Security as things move forward to their increases.
So, Doug, what areas do you feel you have consensus on?
Let me pull it out real quickly.
Heather, can you make a comment?
Sure.
I think the service rates need to be addressed by you guys, obviously. They impinge you drastically. That's section 1. Section 2 needs to be addressed by you. Section 3, the international terminal charges. We have some suggestions that the compromise on that has been to take all of those rates, except for item 15 for the commercial fishing. All those tariff rates, we basically compared them to the other tariff rates that the folks are using, and I was shocked to find that these are like, the other people are 200, they're 2 times as much as we are, to 5 times in some cases.
On the tariffs?
On some of the tariffs, we're way behind. So we just suggested putting the tariffs 15% above the board, so we get a little bit of increase.
Well, I guess it has been about 4 or 5 years since we adjusted those tariffs.
They can be adjusted again, but at least let's pop them up 15% across the board.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so the next item, the RV park, I think we got great consensus on that. And the civil penalties, what have you, haven't had any arguments on that. The admin fees, some of the folks are still questioning some of the, like, they want to make the section 7B everything a buck instead of charging a quarter. I had suggested maybe 30 cents for making copies, but we have people that want to make it a buck. It's as Sarah said, it's not a big deal on the whole scheme of things. So I think that we're in okay on that. The insurance rates, no, we can't set those. They're set by our our insurance advisors. So those are set. So yeah, I'd say sections 1, 2, and just sections 1 and 2 would mostly affect you guys, and then leave it up to you if you want to readdress in section 3, item 15 for the fishing vessels, or if you're satisfied with what's proposed in there now.
So when you say in South Beach Moorage, South Beach Recreation Marina, you didn't raise rates there at all?
No, let me pull that up so I can. We did raise some of the short-term rates. We didn't raise the long-term rates. The annual rates are proposed to be the same.
Okay.
Consensus. May I make that comment?
Yes, go ahead, Karen.
Just for information, in general, rates last year were raised 5%, but rounded to the nearest dollar. So that's
There were some
general.
there were some
areas
that's
that
general.
raised
There were
at
some
all.
7. There were other numbers
Yeah.
besides 5.
Yeah.
I looked at it this weekend.
Well, and that's because some of the numbers were so low that when you rounded up to the next dollar, it didn't raise it 5%, it raised it 8% or 12%.
Right.
So I think you have a great solution here. From my standpoint of thinking, I can make it happen with the staff that I have and the laws that we have to follow.
Is that a helpful recommendation as a commissioner?
It is.
So my motion would apply to sections 1 and 2 service rates, but I'd really like to know from the representative doing most of the business at the terminals.
And 3.
If section 3, how you feel about that? And if I understand, this is a really frustrating conversation because I've heard of living documents before, but this is a writhing, wiggling document that's been changed more times than I can count. And here I am turning pages, and I know there's been changes since you gave me this at the end.
We put a huge amount of work into this, and what I'm basically hearing is we're going to start from scratch. So that's fine. I'm okay with that. We get everybody's feedback that way.
I don't know that that's what you're hearing. If you've already done an incredible amount of work, then you must have some rationale.
Well, one of the things that you pointed out was that you changed the document, how it was compiled to be easier in the future. So the future is upon us.
I hate this stuff. I've always hated the rates and fees, how it was documented. It's, it'd be a lot easier job.
So I'm going to blame the fact that I got back from Kodiak at 10 last night for not doing a great job of staying on task, but Bob has a motion that he's trying to make, and it is to raise the rates by what they were last year, specific to sections 1, 2, and I don't know about, and 3, and
Okay, so that's an amended motion.
well, he never got a second on the first
it hasn't been
motion,
seconded, so I don't need to
I'm
amend
just
it.
trying to get it right.
You just need to
Section
say
1
it.
and 2.
Right. And 3. Just so I make sure I get it right in the minutes.
I'll second. Okay, good.
So, could you read the motion again, so I understand it?
I could try. I can't read it because I didn't write it.
Well,
But the motion would be to advise the committee to advise the commission to adopt service rates for the 18-19 budget that reflect the same increases as the 17-18 budget increases relative to sections 1, 2, and 3.
thank you.
There was no first
So
time.
Ted, you seconded. Yeah. With a
That's the
second,
new
Karen
motion.
from Ted.
Can I read what I have? This just
Sure.
I mean, embarrassing. Go ahead. Yeah.
okay. Bob Enner moved and Ted Gibson second. That the committee recommend or to the commission to adopt service rate increases as they were applied in the fiscal year 17-18 budget, specific to sections 1, 2, and 3.
For the
For the
18-19
18-19 budget.
Okay.
Is that still with the intention to try to
Yeah.
adopt and go over this stuff, find out what the real budget is, look at all that stuff over the next couple of months?
And what I would say is, under the justification for that, we would include that. I don't know if we have to have a motion for that, but
You could amend it, add it.
I think the justification, just the written justification is fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, it gives the commission something to work with.
I'm good. I'll call for the
Does
question.
anybody have an issue with that motion? Everybody understand it? Any objections? So, carries unanimously. And then just in the rationale, Karen, we would say that the committee would like more time to understand the justification for the increases, where the money's going, and provide, feedback. Let's say no later than 6 months after the start of the fiscal year. So by the end of what?
6 months.
Well, I think we should start now. I'm just throwing it out there as a, we could say 3 months from the start of the fiscal year.
I would like to see a supplemental budget in 3 months.
Yeah.
Personally.
We should start as soon as we can, but we do need to get through this budget first
Right.
before we start,
Yeah.
obviously.
But I think this is going to get you through this budget. These recommended changes right now, this will get you through the budget and open up the door to conditions.
But until the commission votes it in, there's
If
really
they
no
even
direction
do,
given
yeah.
to the staff to start on it.
And that'll be the end of the month.
Right, it'll be at the end of the
Yeah.
month.
So throw out a timeline if you want to.
Is this something that would be a discussion item or anything that would be dealt with in the budget committee meeting on Wednesday?
Well, it'll have to be explained to the budget committee members. But before that, I guess I think I would propose a nearly immediate meeting for the commission.
Right,
to
because the commission
take this
has to weigh in
suggestion
on
and
this.
consider it, and if you guys then give us direction, I'll implement it, but we need to do it ASAP. And we can do that. We even have an emergency ability to do that we don't have a 24-hour notice. I don't know if that would fall under it. Dave, you have experience there?
Doesn't qualify.
I can tell you right off that if we don't have a budget at the end of the month, I've been advised by the Department of Revenue and other groups, the port has to shut down. So that's the direction I've been given.
Yeah, I just
There's
wonder
no way
what
in their right
mechanism
mind wants
there
that
is
to
for the...
happen. Yeah.
What-
I'm sorry, Sarah.
So the budget committee meeting on Wednesday is not a place or time that this recommendation would come up, that we would be able to vote on it as a commission, or in the package of voting on the possible vote on the entire budget?
I'm suggesting that we do that even much sooner, and the commission meet for this very subject and talk about the rates item only and approve the CFUG's recommendation, and then I will
Or
immediately
discuss the CA?
discuss and approve it if you agree, and then I and staff will immediately implement that and try to stay on the extremely tight budget process that we're on.
So that would take a week for a regular meeting to be, or
No,
24
I'm
hours?
talking about tomorrow. Or later today, even I'll talk to Pete about the emergency section, because it is emergency if I have to be forced to shut down the port because the budget isn't done. It's not a matter of other people. I'm only stretching it another week or a few more days because there are a lot of requirements that we have on this budget. Dave can address that. It's an extremely structured process we have to follow, and we are at the very end of that structure, and the commissioners all understand this in no uncertain terms. I've written reports on this to them, and they understand that. And so it's something we need to do almost immediately, and as soon as maybe after the meeting, you and I can talk to some of the other folks and get that arranged.
With the meeting notice laws, can you do that?
Well, at the very minimum, you have a 24-hour meeting notice for a special session.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking you're saying this afternoon. I don't know that you can you?
We can have a special session 24 hours from when it's,
Whenever we notice it.
whenever we notice it and post it.
Well,
Okay.
we need to see if there's a quorum available with the commission.
That's another good point. Something like this only takes a quorum of the commission. It doesn't take full.
There's only 4 of us.
Okay, other comments?
I don't have any problem doing it this week if we can, if we can come up with a quorum for this.
Yeah,
Going over this.
Well, if the commission rejects it, then, which they may.
Although I need, this needs to start in July after we get through the budget process.
Right.
There's so much stuff that has to
it hasn't started in July.
Mark?
As we move on, can we go to item 6 and skip 5 for now? Because I'm going to have to leave, and I would like to address that.
Yes. Are we done then on the,
Was a motion voted on?
yeah, it was passed unanimously. Okay, let's do that then. Yeah, because it's almost 11. After 11, yeah, thank you. So let's go to number 6, Aaron.
I provided this. This was a report that I put in the last regular monthly meeting of the Port Commission. Just this is a point of discussion, really. But from 1 May 17 to 1 May 18, we increased revenue across the hoist dock by 19%. And that obviously varies, as you all well know, on the state of the fisheries that are involved there and many different variables. But we certainly did increase, we doubled the amount of activity we do with independent buyers there over that last year. Most of that was accomplished through an additional shift, especially during the crab season. So overall, this summer, a couple of things that we have been sort of working on was I got a call a couple months ago from a potential squid buyer that was talking about coming up into the area. That seems to have cooled off. I think they're probably doing well enough where they're at, and so moving probably isn't warranted. But the other thing I've been working on here of recent last month or so is I've been working with Clint a whole bunch on trying to determine if we can entice some albacore boats to come up this way. It seems like there's still an opportunity for some of them to come around. What I'm hearing from most of those folks is many of those who don't regularly come in here anyway have tried in the past and weren't so happy with their ability to get offloaded in time. Either that, or a few of them had said they just weren't so happy with the amenities. That being things like mainly basic logistic things like rental cars, laundry service, showers, and things like that. Some of those things since that time, I think, have actually, like Enterprise is right there at the top of Fogarty, and they deliver cars, and that was one of the questions I got a couple times, is can we get a rental car delivered? So some of that stuff just has to do with the port, I think, getting, for lack of a better term, doing a little bit of marketing through Western Fishboat Owners Association, also working with AFA to see what their needs are. So what I've done is AFA is supposed to be sending a representative out to us to meet and take a tour of the port, see what's available, and kind of learn about what we're currently doing. And then Western Fishboat Owners Association is more of a informational hub for their members. And so I just last week finished out a piece that I'd like to get forwarded in their newsletter, and that would hopefully bring some more albacore boats around. In which case, we're going to hopefully we keep the hoist dock busy and use the hoist at the terminal to be able to get some of those guys offloaded. So that's the information I got right now.
That's my concern is, I see that port hoist being used a lot more now. You're unloading shrimp boats and black cod boats more than in the past. And when those guys get set up, I'm not going to be able to use it, and it's only basically 2 hoists there if you got large boats. And I'm looking at fresh salmon, fresh albacore, and I'd like to be able to use that terminal if that is plugged up down there, like you made the exception for crab.
I can address that immediately. We don't have to go through a long process and discuss it to death, and we don't have to write anything. You have my permission that if our people are telling you to go down there for whatever reason at the port's convenience, you'll be charged the same rates that you're charged at hoist dock, and you can do that as long as it doesn't interfere with the other boats that are down there.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Don't we have a problem with longshoremen now?
I'll address that if there is.
Nothing's coming off this boat, prepackaged and palletized.
Well, I'm not going to address the frozen. They said they never had a problem with the fresh. Now, frozen, I don't really do frozen, so I support the frozen guys, but I'm just concerned about what my business is, and that's fresh product.
Their interaction with me has been very reasonable, and I think they are logical and rational and reasonable. I think we can work with them.
Work with who?
He was talking about whether the longshoremen had
We don't have an agreement with ILWU.
I didn't say that.
Well, but when you're asking or discussing, it means that you're inferring that you have some type of...
See, I thought there was one. That's what I
it never has
Well,
been.
because that's what they say,
Right.
but nobody can produce
Legal
one.
has always
Okay,
told
that's
us,
what I-
never ever, do not sign a document, a labor
'Cause they-
document
yeah.
with a labor union.
Yeah, I thought that was.
Court never has.
Yeah, I thought they had all kinds of
So
stuff.
the albacore's not blast frozen that they'll be offloading?
No, it is, that there is an exemption under the Jones Act that the longshoremen don't have. We've been through, like I said before at the other meetings, we've been through this before, and they can't stop it.
No.
They can't touch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Then why can't they have more ownership?
Doug, I understand then that the terminals are open for business for offloading any product.
Absolutely, as long
Not as an overflow.
We don't want everybody just
Available.
running down there. They have to, if they can't offload at 5, and there's a reason we need to send them down there for some other logistics or what have you, we'll do that. And that's what it's there for, it's to be used. As a matter of fact, we have another swing hoist here I'd like to ask you guys for some advice on that we're looking at putting out there on the east. It was misprinted on the last sheet, on the last page. It's on the east part, on the east wharf, not on the west wharf.
Keep one hoist closer together, one forklift can manage 2 offloads, be productive.
That'd be super. It'd be great during crab season to have that extra hoist when guys are trying to get their second load on.
But I just got to say one thing here, and this isn't going to try and crap on anybody's parade, but in October, November, and December, that whole dock is double tied with some awful large boats. Now, if you're going to set aside another hoist area, you're going to have to determine how big that area is, because then you're going to overload Port Dock 5. You're going to have boats that traditionally have been mooring up there for 30 years, moving to Port Dock 5, and these boats, Port Dock 5 can't hold that weight.
But most of the time, the months you're talking about, unless we have an on-time crab opening, which we can't seem to ever have that anymore, it's not a problem, because they're not using it October, November, December for offloading.
The crabbers.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm just saying, in that time period, you just got to consider that.
Right, I just don't see that as a problem because it's a low use time.
Yeah.
For offloading
is it look at your expense, because the expense of relocating that hoist that was up there originally, you might want to add a little money to it, because no other section of the dock is reinforced or rebarred for a hoist. It was only that one when we relocated that hoist up there and put it, because it had to be moved on the railroad dock from where it was. It was almost $50,000 just to reinforce the dock to mount the crane there. So you might look at your numbers on that a little closer.
Maybe some grants would be available.
But fishermen never turn down a hoist.
Heather, this is a good time to go over the request I had too, after Bob's.
I don't mean to belabor the point, but you said sure it'll be open. Then you said if it's too busy at Port Dock 7. Some of the buyers have more kind of semi-permanent setups, and some of them just need a truck. So, I mean, I'd like to see some of the guys who have their own little miniature office be able to move there and not just go there when things are busy, because that's easier said than done. They're scrambling. They have lots of containers. They have trucks to direct. They have employees that, they have all their paperwork to cover. So I'd like to see it open for business, subject to making arrangements with Don, that it's feasible, but not as an overflow, because it's not going to happen really as an overflow, I don't think.
How would that work? Like you're coming in, Mark, but the hoist is full, so then you call the port office If it's
I'd
during
have to
business
check
hours.
with Kent or Dawn probably, you know. I mean, it's obvious when it's full. And I'd probably go to Kent or whoever's managing that area and say, or I'll talk to the fishermen and the other buyers there and say, how long are you going to be here? It's first come, first served, you know, there. But I can't, you know, if it's a shrimp boat, they're going to be there for a long time. Or sometimes he's got another boat scheduled. And if I want to be there for 2 or 3 hours, I can't break up his operation.
Shrimp boats are unloading shrimp?
Yeah.
For what market?
Yes.
Brett is buying.
Cheap, they're cheap.
Okay.
Pacific owns the whole lakefront.
Plus the eels take a long time to unload. too,
And
right?
Tony Pettis has unloaded 80 or 90,000 pounds of black cod there over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, but the
Takes
shrimp
time.
seem...
Massacre's unloading
It's
there.
kind of new. Yeah, well, you have too, Gino, haven't you?
Yeah, I unload there all the time. There have been.
Last year, the Redeemer unloaded
Huh.
the all black cod at that dock.
Because there are no other docks available.
And that's kind of what I would like to be able to do is not set a bunch of rules sitting right here, beforehand, and be able to do exactly what you're describing, Mark. And it's because what our biggest problem is coordinating. As you all know, boats don't come in on a schedule. They don't show up, and so we have to be able to move everything we're doing around on a moment's notice. So we need to be able to control that so that we know, we're sending Mark out someplace else, and then we can get somebody there to help him out, And aside from that, I think what you'll find is we may be able to do more and better than what folks think that we can do. And we might be able to be successful that way. But I think the main thing is being able to coordinate with the boat that's coming in and get us situated right. When we know they're coming in.
Yeah, you don't always have the forklift driver up there on the weekend. For me, it's not a big problem. I can load right into my truck. I got lift gates and things like that. But it is, sometimes you do need to have a forklift driver up there, and that's important.
It's not always available right now,
Right.
because if we're busy down there on
Right.
7, we just can't.
Right.
Okay, so Gary,
Unless you're willing to pay overtime.
But there is a lot of, on certain things, there is that you can count on certain times. Your shrimp boats, your black cod boats. When we were doing all our black cod with the Redeemer there last year, we're making a schedule with the coordinator. Seattle is setting up trucks. We know when that boat's going to be sitting there. If we had someone we could coordinate with the port and say, okay, we're going to be here at this time. All right. I know it's first come, first serve, but that's where the thing, the terminal, because we can't coordinate those boats. Those boats are on a schedule. And so what I'm saying is there has to be some kind of coordination here where, hey, we don't know what's going to, I remember last year, black cod, we rolled up there, we had trucks sitting there, we had everything ready to go, and a slime mill boat pulled in 5 minutes before we got there.
Yeah.
And we sat there for 4 hours waiting.
Okay,
and he's got a truck driver, and he's got, sitting there. So, there can be some coordination here.
Sarah, then Clint, and then Doug had a recommendation.
Just a quickie, what basically are the fisheries that would be able to, all right, I'll go to the terminals. The ones that don't have a setup kind of office thing. It sounds like black cod's like that.
Well, Brad,
Brad's fine.
Brad would have no problem going to the terminals.
All their offices are portable.
He just has to move his platform scales up there.
The scales.
The scales, yeah. Moving scales is not a good thing.
There's gaffers for the shore power
Okay.
that can be used for 110.
And it also would bring, when
Gary.
some of these buyers in town know that they can schedule a boat to come in, it might generate more money for the port when people know they can generate a schedule.
Clint,
That
and then
was my
David.
thoughts. What about the option of using the one at the terminal more as a booked out long-term unloading for the guys that are going to take 6 or 8 hours to unload? That was the thoughts with the Oliver guys, but maybe do the same thing with the Black guys. Make the 2 at 7, first come, first serve, and make that one a booked thing unless it's open, and still be able to use it for overflow if it's open. But be able to book long-term unloading slots,
It's going to take another employee to run that scheduled program because I got the crane and boats.
If it's
to take
making
care of.
money, it should cover an employee.
Well, I know. That has to be
I'm just
addressed.
going to make this point real quick. Why am I paying a surcharge on fuel at the terminals? I'm going to recommend that surcharge is eliminated. Because if I'm paying a surcharge to pay for my wear and tear on the asphalt with 3 semis a year, that's bullshit.
I'm going to recommend it to get removed because, I mean, we look at the truck traffic and everything that's going on and off the port property. Nobody else is paying the surcharge.
There's a lot of semis parked down there every day.
Yeah, so why?
Do we charge for those?
That's, we're going to address that. I'm going to recommend.
We don't charge them for maintenance on the pavement.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Those
It's bogus.
Those are on the Ham Street deal.
Yeah,
We
that's
had-
what it was.
We had about
Exactly.
40 trucks come across down at the hoist dock this year within about a 6-week span. I mean, that certainly creates where, and I think at long run, we do need to be charging for that traffic, whether it's Pacific bringing down, product over to the bio plant, or if it's somebody coming out to the terminal off, whatever it is, the trucks have got to pay for the use of the facility, I think.
Well, until we figure that out, eliminate that surcharge on fuel.
What about the semis that are just there, their trailers are parked there?
They're paying.
Are they?
Same lot storage, same what else.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all paying.
Doug, you want to throw out your recommendation?
Well, it's not a recommendation, it's just a suggestion, or actually a request to the group.
Okay.
Makes sense to staff that we should have a second swing hoist out there at the terminal. So, for me to get that project expedited and push it through the commissioners, I need to have a fairly good report on that. And I would like to look at, maybe if you could have a subgroup of folks here that might be willing to help us, or even do for us, for a first draft of writing the rationale, the needs, the solution, the pros and cons. This is just what the commission's asked for. Projected payback time and IRR, I can do that if you give me the monthly revenue stream you see from month 1 to the 60 month for the first 5 years. I'll do the different calculations and what have you, but you guys know why it needs to be done much better than my imagination. So is there some way or mechanism that the CFUG could provide that to us?
I'll volunteer to be on that committee.
Okay.
Committee of the committee.
This is an impact to the distant water, to be honest.
I show up because I'm bored.
I'd help Mark.
Okay. All right, so Karen, we'll have a subcommittee of Mark Newell, Gene Law, David Jenks, and myself. You want to be on that?
I'd be on that. So I use that a lot up there. We're up there all the time.
Well, we're almost at a quorum, so.
Yeah.
And Gary? And
I'm a heavy user up there.
You're a heavy user? What?
I know we don't need another hoist the same size as the existing one, but that's like a 2-ton
a smaller
unit.
hoist would be fine.
We need a 1,500-pound extending hoist just like you've got at John City.
Tell you though, Bob, you put a hoist there, I would use that 100 times more than I would use that other frickin' hoist that rips paint off your boat every time you tie to that dock. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Tie fiberglass boat.
what's the time frame on getting that back?
Actually, there isn't, because I already got that in the budget, and when the budget is, if the budget is passed, it'll be in there. But we can't, when it comes time to get it done, or we have to spend money on it, ordering it and things like that, I have to bring that through the commission, the commissioners have to approve it on an individual item like that. It's a big
But
item.
I see though that, until your supplemental budget passes, you're going to have to, I don't care what dollars you're throwing around, you're going to have to go back through your priority list and reprioritize your priorities on what you're doing.
Actually, we can, for this budget, the first one for the fiscal year, I can balance that the way it is now, without changing the projects.
With a 2%, with the increases from 17 and 18.
Yes.
Well, I think before I went too far, I'd double check your numbers.
The reason I feel I can do that is because of the large contingencies that we already built in for other for purposes like that. And we can use those and adjust them down.
Okay, any other comments on that? We can bang out the last item here, okay? Which is the moorage, commercial marina moorage policy.
Yeah, this is another report I put in the last regular monthly commission meeting. You can see the numbers there on, linear feet of dock space in a commercial marina versus linear feet of current annual and semi-annual moorage holders, and where we're at. So and this kind of goes into what you were talking about, standing, port policies in the past, what they have been, and whether or not you want to change them, or you think they're good, and why they're good, why they're maybe not. Basically, what we do right now is we overbook the marina. We double use certain most of the slips over at Port Dock 5 and 7. And I've heard a lot of discussion. We get asked a lot of times, how come you didn't give an annual mortgage to this person, and then or why did you give an annual mortgage to that person, and I can't get, I don't have any room to tie up when I come in. So that's kind of that's the conundrum you run into when you overbook. So the other side of that would be changing it and not overbooking, but assigning slips. And I've heard a lot of people say they want to assign slips. But I also know that the port's done that before, and it didn't work out real well. I know that other ports do it, and some don't. Anyway, any kind of discussion, I think, on that topic would probably help me out as I figure out,
How many complaints do you get?
On which
on any of them?
Regular complaints.
Because what I've heard through, just on the docks, people being turned away.
Right.
And I think Ted had actually brought at least one or two to us in several meetings ago. I don't know, I thought it was Ted, but maybe it wasn't, about people wanting mortgage but not having the room, that they had to turn them away. So
That's for annual mortgage,
Right.
not
Right.
transit.
Right. And then we get a number of boats that regularly complain when they're coming back and they don't have space to tie up. And it usually happens at times when there's weather and everybody's coming in at once, of course, and it makes a situation where you get, obviously when weather starts picking up, the smaller boats end first and they come in, and then you get the larger boats coming in after that, and it gets even harder for those larger boats to get, space because smaller ones have already taken it all up. So
more docks?
Which all comes down to Dock 7.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, we definitely need more docks, but in the meantime, what do you guys think?
I don't think a guy should be granted annual mortgage or keep his annual mortgage if his mortgage isn't current.
Isn't current?
Isn't current.
Is there a lot of people that don't have current?
We don't have very many, but we do have some that are.
They're in prime spots.
Really?
Why do you let them?
Well, we need to go about the process. I just talked to accounting the other day. We need to go about the process of taking possession of the boat, or
We have that process in place.
Yes, that's right.
So it's all in place. All it's a matter of just following through.
Right. And
we dealt with that a long time ago.
Yeah, some of us are trying to find places to park, and some people are sitting there free that haven't paid and they're in prime spots.
Yeah. So the enforcement regulations are in place.
It's
to solve
there.
that problem.
Yeah, it just needs to be done. So if I could go and push a button and have it done right now, I could certainly, but I don't. The accounting staff handles that, and they have been hemmed up going through budget changes after budget changes.
So I guess, what I would recommend is before we make any wholesale changes to our current mortgage policy, we would deal with the issues we have, that you already have processes in place to deal with, like what Gary's talking about.
We certainly will do that. It's not going to make an appreciable change, though. So it's just as long as we
how
start.
many are you talking about?
Like one. So
you get
more than one.
Well, I'm sorry. It's more than
one.
one. But it's not. I mean, there's very few.
Okay.
It's not a pervasive problem.
But it used to be like that. It used to be if you didn't keep your mortgage, you lost your permanent spot.
So you don't have a permit?
I've never had a permanent
Sarah.
spot. Your hunting permit for a spot.
Yeah.
You lost your annual mortgage, which was quite a bit cheaper than you went to transit rates if you weren't current, which is a lot more. It went way up higher.
Sarah.
So is there anything written in that the commercial marina is for commercial vessels?
Yes. Yes.
Because I saw a non-commercial vessel there last year for quite a while, and I was wondering about that.
Last year? When was it?
Late summer, August.
Did it have pirates on it?
No.
What was it? What was
They
it?
sailboat on cruise.
Yeah, they weren't fishing.
They had
Their engine was down.
Wouldn't that be like a non-commercial vessel to the recreational marina, no matter what?
The problem with that particular boat was it drew so much water that it couldn't go in the
Is
marina.
that fixed because of the dredging over there?
No.
Yeah.
That particular boat drew
Other than
too much
safe
water
for
in it.
So it was just a port in the storm or whatever?
You hear?
David.
70-foot sail.
Yeah, this was all confusing because this was a year and a half ago under Kevin Greenwood. He, during the trying to reinstate shipping, he told us that there was 500 feet of space available at Port Dock 5 for the distant water fleet to tie up. There was 300 feet at Port Dock 3 for us to tie up, and we had all Port Dock 1 to tie up. So he had 9 spaces for 900 feet of boats to tie up at Port Dock 5, 3, and 1. So it's kind of confusing why all of a sudden, a year and a half, now all of a sudden we don't have any moorage. You know, because that's how bogus those numbers were when we were trying to reinstate shipping. It was a bunch of crap. There was no tie-up room. The other thing is when you start talking about, you know, somebody wants a permanent slip, the reason why it failed in the past is because you don't have the port personnel available to go down to the docks to kick people out of the slips. And that's why it failed the last time we did it, was because, you know, as Port Dock 7 gets busier and busier at the hoist dock there, that's just consuming all the manpower we have. I mean, you got the, who's doing the dock walks? The security company? They're the ones that are doing your moorage. They're down there walking the docks. But we don't have anybody else down there to kick people out of slips.
Well, the other problem, Dave, with that was a lot of times in the middle of the night, the big boats would come in, they'd fill empty slips, you know, 2 in the morning or whatever, and you just don't have anybody down there to
no way to
deal
do
with
it.
So when the guys who had, that was their slip, came in, then, you know, they park their boat, they get in a taxi or their car, and they drive to Astoria or wherever.
Yeah.
And you just can't move them.
Now, Astoria's got some slips, annual slips like that are permanent. You know, people can come in and tie up to them. And I've used them in the past, but the thing is, man, as soon as you tie up there, you got a harbor master on your butt. I mean, as soon as you tie up there, somebody's there right now on top of you. And the thing is it's like, I'd say, hey, we're on the boat, we aren't leaving the boat, we're going to sleep on the boat. Get out of here. You know, it's like... So, but we don't have that ability here to do that.
It's in all our best interests to have more docks in Newport.
Yes.
And I think we better start the process together with the city, the port, whoever, to go out and find the funding that I know is out there somewhere to get this process going. Because it would solve so many problems.
Yeah, from my perspective, instead of putting a new hoist up at the terminals, I'd like to see that money spent as in more new docks for Dock 7. I mean, and double the amount or triple the amount or whatever it is that we could get for new docks down there.
How much does the hoist cost?
Pardon me?
How much does it cost for the hoist up there?
Well, to fix it up, I'm not sure what, Doug, you got
I think we put in 130 for that one, and
And
Dave
that
says
might-
there's going to may not even be enough.
But yeah, I mean, by the time you do that, you know, and I brought this point up a couple weeks ago. By the time we don't want to take our brand new pier out there at the terminal and start bolting stuff to it that's not engineered right. We want to make sure our pier is maintained in good shape, and it's going to cost to get that figured out. I don't want to just throw up a hoist in the afternoon or whatever, and then find out it's going to cause, you know, even more damage.
Hydraulic system, electrical.
I mean, we want to do it right, so it may
We
be more
would hope
expensive
that
than
it would
that.
be
You know, I don't know.
right.
You know, and I know fishermen hate paying the cost of somebody operating a piece of equipment, but they do make mobile dock frames. They do make them, you know, and they're smaller in configuration, and they're mobile. You can use them at this end of the dock, the other end of the dock. I forget, they're called a deck crane or something. I forget what they're called, but they're like just almost a flat
little hub crane type thing.
Yeah, but they aren't that big a deal. And it was discussed a long time ago of using one of those instead of a fixed crane if we were going to add another hoist up there.
Why'd they go against it? You know, I mean,
we hardly had enough money to finish the dock up there. I mean, we were begging for money, so everything else was put aside. I mean, that's why there's no fender pilings up. That's why the fender pilings are welded to the dock. I mean, that's why that's a failure going on. I mean, there were so many things that were left unfinished because there was no money. But before I put a crane up there, which when I looked at your $130,000, I instantly thought $250,000, just because of knowing what we went through and relocating the other hoist. And I would look for a mobile deck crane, you know, and that's what was discussed originally.
France.
That way you don't have to, when you put in a fixed hoist, it's fixed. So you're going to have to determine the largest boat you're going to unload there. And then you're going to have to fix the crane for that boat, you know, so you got the mooring bits where you need them.
There's a lot more involved than just going up and sticking a crane in place. You got to determine your size of boats, do a layout, okay? Because you need that crane to fit in those certain areas, that hoist. So if you got a deck crane, a mobile deck crane, you don't have to worry about that. That boat can be hanging in the dock and you position it and you're offloading. So, probably.
How about a helicopter?
That's, I'm saying that's my suggestion.
Drones.
Well, the good
Any
news is
other
that
comments on?
I think it's a good news that that's been straightened out about, you know, the memorandum to just cover Aaron in the winter for crab ended up being misconstrued by possible buyers. And so I'm really glad that this is in the minutes, and that's another reason to have official minutes, is that that question has been answered in public. All the fisheries are invited out there. There's no people reading this knows, oh, it's open for business. Great. I thought maybe we could only do crab out there. Well, now they know the difference, and that caused a problem. So.
You know, just to carry on a little further, if the Port of Newport's going to operate like a fish plant, they need to operate like a fish plant. They need to start scheduling boats. They need to start, it's got to be on a schedule. It can't be just willy-nilly. You can't have the slime boat pull in front of the guy that scheduled his trucks and stuff. You know, any fish plant I ever fished for, whether it's in Alaska or wherever, you're on a whiteboard. You got a whiteboard. You got a date. If your date changes, they take you off the board. You go down to the bottom of the board. That's and I see that we have to do that.
I think that's the same thing I've run into talking to people from, like I said, the Albacore folks. They're like, that's the way the hoist works. You know, they need to have some certainty. Anybody, it doesn't matter what it is, who's coming in to use our facility in order to base their business out of, needs to have a certain degree of certainty that they're going to be able to get in and do what they plan to do.
Including the current users.
Yes, but I think the change, the change needs work, you know.
Heather?
Yes.
I think we're losing perspective here. The fill hoists were taking gear on and off the boats. That's what it's primarily used for. Now it's a fish dock. What happens to all those boats that need to put the shrimp gear on, shrimp gear off, crab gear on, crab gear off?
Right.
I mean,
Now
you can't displace
crane
them.
costs,
right?
Because you can't get to the hoist to do your business.
Yes.
Yeah, so
and that's got to be built in. And certainly it's the same thing with gear swaps as offloading. If somebody, please let me know if anybody gets to the point where they can't do what they got to do. We don't want that. We want it. But it still has it's got priority.
That's why you need a second horse.
You see more and more gear moving to the terminals. You see more outriggers up there now. You see more and more gear moving up there.
Yeah.
It's becoming a fishing industry up there. More gear. Whether you put in another hoist or a smaller traveling crane that you don't have to pay the cost of the hydro crane, you know.
I think a hoist or something up there is a really good idea. I second one.
I agree, because what Gene just said was, you know, the original intent of that dock was just
replacing
Yeah,
salmon
gear
holes.
changing.
yeah.
We still try and make that happen first. That's part of the set of rules that we.
Yeah, you guys do.
And
We
I
do
think
the best we can. We try and fit as many people in there
Oh,
in
it's
the shortest
amazing.
amount of time, no matter how it's going, with them taking precedent over.
There's worse problems to have than a bunch of people want to come do business in your port.
I mean, when we only have 2 buyers, so you're going to see more and more of the port unloading product. If people want to come here and buy and make it competitive for the fishermen to be able to sell product, I mean, it's also a check and balances with the fish plants.
It is.
It makes them have to pay more product and, you know, be competitive on the sale. You'll buy our product when there's more people can come in here.
It's good for everyone.
It's good for everyone.
It's also a way to help recover the cost of the terminals.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, it's almost noon, so I think we should wrap it up unless there's any other burning.
I just have one burning thing. That's scheduling a meeting for an executive session.
Well, I was
because
going
I want
to
to
close
know.
that out, so
I'd like
if
to
we're
hear
able
your
to schedule that for this week, are people
Yeah.
available?
I'll make myself
Yes.
available.
So I'll check with,
Available Wednesday.
I'm not Wednesday, but Thursday or Friday.
We're not available.
Not Thursday?
Not Thursday morning.
Everybody needs to know how much exposure they really
Let's
have.
talk to, I'll talk to Pete when we leave here and see about if we can make Friday work.
Heather,
I'm done.
Right.
you should, if you're going to Pete, you should go to Pete, I'll go to Pete. The subcommittees and the commissioners are not authorized to go into Pete all the time. There's one President Pro Tempore that can go directly to Pete, otherwise I can.
Yep.
I'll certainly facilitate you and bend over backwards to
Okay. Talk to Pete about the executive session on Friday then, please.
Friday, what time?
Whatever time works for them.
Are you guys available on weekends for anything like that? Would that be a better?
We don't have to have a quorum. It's just if you're arrested and going to jail, you should show up. I'm gonna make sure I'm here. If Rick ain't here, he's the one who's going to jail.
You gonna make reservations?
He's totally the line anyway. Okay, the meeting's adjourned at, looks like 11:48.